Latchford and Frank McGarvey. By the way, we realised Brian McLean was once with Villa, but of course he came direct from Motherwell to Celtic. And the first 12 winners... Disbelief amongst the Ibrox supporters ultimately gives way to outright anger a few minutes later. By now the crowd has had enough. There's little else to do but criticise. And then the cruel choruses of "Greig must go" begin to rise. The afternoon has turned extremely sour. Monday morning, the placid normality of the stadium cloaks the inner turmoil of a club uncertain of its future. But there's no rest. The public know there's a crisis, and nobody at Ibrox can now hide themselves away from the bitter disillusionment of many of the erstwhile faithful.
5 years, but there's no winner a league championship yet. That's monotonous for Rangers standards.
Obviously, I think we've got to get a change of face, a change of blood, a change of attitude.
I think they've given John Greig too long. 5 years a lot. It's not one as a league at all, the Premier League. No one as a thing.
By Wednesday, the fate of the club, and more especially that of the manager John Greig, is getting as many column inches as the news from the Lebanon, a fact that simply underlines the importance of the club to many people. The controversy about the future of Greig is in full swing now, and perhaps Rangers' most famous supporter, comedian Andy Cameron, is quick to join in with a defence of his close friend.
It's 5 years since we won the league championship, but you've got to remember also that John Greig was taken from the playing staff and pumped into the most important job in Scottish football, maybe even in British football. And I don't know any other major club that's done that with a player.
That was a mistake, you think?
I think it was a mistake in hindsight, but at the time, I don't know a Rangers fan that didn't agree with it. I certainly agreed with it, but I think, and I don't mean any disrespect to the board when I said it's to pump him out to grass. Changes have got to be made. And John Greig knows the changes. It's not for me to say what the changes are. But I think it's time the directors backed him, man, instead of having this threat hanging over his head.
But they have backed him, Andy. I mean, they've backed him well.
They've backed him well. 3-1. 3-1, so the man knows that there's one man after him. Yeah, but and everybody knows who that is. Why doesn't that man say, right, I'll back him?
That's not unusual in a football club, though. We know
that
within
clubs...
Make
it right, though.
We know within clubs there are people who might not agree with a manager and says so. That's not unusual, though, is it? Really?
No, it's not unusual, but it's not. That doesn't mean to say it's right. Why don't the directors get together and say, right, his contract lasts to next year, right? And we're not going to say that it's over at that time, but until that contract comes up for review, he's got our full backing. They've not said that. They know, everybody knows that there's a guy hunting for him. That's no good. How can a man work under these circumstances?
There is reputed to be bitter division about Greig within the club, and one fancies that if the manager had been any other person than one of the greatest players the club has ever had, then his fate might well have been sealed by now. One of the many stories circulating about Rangers is that there is a serious structural problem with the marvellous new stadium. They built the stands facing the pitch. It's a cruel joke, but it comes mainly from the lips of Rangers supporters themselves. And if the club don't find the right path in the next couple of weeks, then the jokes will multiply as the support does a massive vanishing act. And from within that magnificent stadium on Thursday, a defiant and terse statement by John Greig: "I am still Rangers manager and will fight all the way to give the success to the supporters that they deserve." But you know, the whole centre of interest in Scottish football has changed to the northeast, and particularly today to Pittodrie, where the champions Dundee United play Aberdeen. Now,
10 goals to 0 at Ibrox tonight. John McDonald got a hat-trick. Rangers set a new record for a Scottish club in European competition, and the 10th of those goals, scored by Ian Redford a minute from time, was Rangers' 200th in European competition. In the European Cup, Dundee and Akranis won. Aberdeen win 3-2. Paris Saint-Germain 2, Glentoran 1. Paris Saint-Germain win 4-2. Rangers 10, Valletta 0. Rangers win 18-0 on aggregate. Valkia Haka 3, Sligo Rovers 0. Valkia Haka win 4-0.
What was Aberdeen struggling to go through 3-2 on aggregate against the amateurs from Iceland? It's very unlike them. They're certainly off the boil at the moment, and they'll have to be in the boil at Tynecastle this afternoon against a very upgraded Hearts side. Well, Rangers, there they were. They thrashed the Maltese. We had a story about Rangers, and they came back and showed that they can still do it. They scored 18 goals over the 2 legs, and that's a Scottish record in European goal scoring.
And that means, of course, that the Maltese are allowed to stay in this competition will very shortly have to have a Prevention of Cruelty Flag Day for them. Dundee United are drawn against...
Revealing. You'll see why later.
Hello and good evening from Sports Extra. Tonight, our postscript on Wednesday's International at Hampden Park, and to look ahead, of course, to the weekend's football. And here's Graham Stewart.
Wednesday night's International at Hampden was an academic exercise for both nations involved. Scotland knew they were out of the European Championship race, and Belgium knew they were definitely in. So the match was a chance for Jock Steen and the fans to do some studying. And after half an hour, they could have been excused for wanting to leave the classroom, because it was Belgium who took the lead. And it was set up by under-21 player Cleeson getting his first senior cap. A neat 1-2. And taking on Arthur Albiston and crossing for Verdeckers to miss kick, then Ceulemans to shoot, and Jim Leighton did well there, but Verkouteren stoops to conquer, and it was 1-0 Belgium. And it stayed that way until the 5th minute of the second half, when Vintak made a mistake, and Kenny Dalglish, as alert as ever, sent Charlie Nicholas on his way, who beat Faf and got a knock into the bargain. But that was it, 1-1. Well, Scotland's next game is their last European Championship outing, away to East Germany next month, another step on the way to World Cup 86. Now right back to the present and the Premier positions. Dundee United are back at the top, while Aberdeen, Celtic and Hearts are all on 11 points. The champions take on St Mirren at Love Street this week. It's looking much better for them these days. 7 points and 5 wins in a row gives them a much healthier position. Dundee have 5 points, and interestingly, all of them have been won away from home. Well, last season, Dundee managed to get a point at Ibrox after Rangers had scored a superb goal.
Wilson striding forward. Good play from the big centre half. McDonald, McPherson still going through. This could be a great goal. Absolutely superb. Fraser looking for McKimmie on the far side. Good play with the fullback. It's a good cross. There's Ian Ferguson. Well, it just is not Ian Ferguson's day, but he's still battling in the box. Far post, heading it back in. It's in the net, and the goal is given. And it's little Davy Bell who makes it one apiece.
George McGeehee has failed a fitness test this morning, and Bobby Glennie and Peter Mackey are added to the Dundee pool. Robert Pritz will miss the game. He's on international duty with Sweden. Well, it's Hibs
With a match.
So 2-1 for Motherwell, and that was that as far as thousands of Rangers fans were concerned. They left the ground after Motherwell's second goal, and several hundred gathered outside the main stand to register their extreme disapproval at the performance of the team and the manager. That was Rangers' 5th league defeat of the season, and it appears to have put even more pressure on John Greig's position at the club. And once again, the spotlight will be thrown onto the directors, who themselves were also the subjects of abuse from the demonstrators, and their next organised meeting is the regular board meeting on Tuesday. Well, that result at Ibrox means Motherwell move above St Mirren, who lost at St Johnstone, but Rangers stay in 6th place. At the top, Dundee United are now a point clear, with Aberdeen moving into 2nd spot after their defeat of Celtic. At the top of the...
Good evening and a warm welcome to Midweek Scott Sport. Tonight's headlines: Derek Johnston returns to Scottish football with 2 brilliant goals for Dundee United. Premier League Motherwell held at home by Alloa, and tonight's Section 2...
So a 2-0 win for Rangers, and they keep their 100% record in Section 2 with 4 wins out of 4. Now looking at the rest of tonight's results. In Section 1, Dundee United 3, Morton 0, the club he used to support. He scored 2 goals before going off in the second half with a touch of cramp. Ralph Milne scored United's other goal. Motherwell 2, Alloa 2. In the section, Rangers are clear on 8 points. Clydebank are second on 4, then Hearts and St Mirren both have 2.
that after 5 years, John Greig has quit as Rangers manager. Here's Graham Stewart.
It was just before midday today that Rangers chairman Ray Simpson told a hastily assembled press conference that John Greig had decided to call it a day. Greig himself wasn't present at that meeting, but in his absence, Rangers secretary Campbell Ogilvie read a statement on his behalf in which it was made clear that Mr. Greig had offered to resign and that no pressure had been put on him from the board. After the statement, Chairman Ray Simpson made his own feelings clear.
I'm very sad. I'm a great friend of John Greig's, and as I said after my statement that John Greig has been a great Ranger, I'm sad that he's going.
Do you have any idea when you would be able to name a successor?
No, we will name a successor when we have a successor. We are not going to be rushed into a quick appointment. I don't know. We have not yet decided who is going to be the next manager.
Today's announcement brings to an end a 23-year relationship between John Greig and Rangers Football Club. It was in 1960, not long after this picture was taken, that Greig and his schoolboy teammate Willie Henderson signed for the Ibrox club. It was the start of a career which turned Greig into one of Rangers' greatest post-war players. It added up to this: 44 full Scottish caps, 5 League Championship medals, 6 Scottish Cup successes, 3 League Cup victories, and perhaps Rangers' finest hour, the capture of the European Cup Winners' Cup in 1972. But the Greig success story didn't end there. He was twice Scottish Footballer of the Year and was awarded the MBE in 1977 for his services to the game. And all that was achieved during a staggering 857 first-team appearances for his club. Here are just some of those great moments.
McLean. That's it. Rangers have won, and John Greig has his 6th winner's medal. The remarkable man who has just capped 18 seasons at Ibrox.
3 years later, he was back at Hampden, this time as manager, when Rangers beat Dundee United 4-1 in the Cup final. And in the same year, his team also took the League Cup, again from Dundee United.
Redford. Ian Redford surely wins the cup for Rangers. Absolutely unbelievable.
But these successes have not been enough. During Greig's tenure of office, Scottish football has seen the continuing dominance of Celtic and the emergence of the so-called new firm of Aberdeen and Dundee United. While these clubs have prospered, Rangers have struggled, and this season the team have won only 3 out of 9 league games, making it likely, once again, the biggest prize of all, the League Championship, will continue to elude them. The low point came when Motherwell, ironically managed by Greig's highly successful predecessor Jock Wallace, visited Ibrox a week ago.
Big space on the left for Ian Alexander. To hit it forwards. There's a chance. And that is the winner, perhaps, young Jim Burns. The Rangers defence totally stripped.
So John Greig has gone. Well, where does he go from here, and who will take over at Ibrox? Alan Sonby is with Ian Archer.
Ian, wasn't it just the case, really, that John Greig had no managerial experience to take over as manager of a top club, therefore he was unlikely to succeed? He didn't succeed. It's surprising he didn't go earlier.
That is true. It was interesting watching Ray Simpson there saying we won't be rushed into a quick appointment this time, because they certainly were rushed into a quick appointment when John Greig got the job. Jock Wallace left very suddenly, and one day Greig was a player in the dressing room, next day he was in charge of his former pals, and that really didn't work out very well. And so I think they will take their time this time and get the right man. A man with experience outside of Ibrox.
Do you believe the statement there was no pressure on him to resign from the board?
I'm absolutely sure. John Greig said to me at the start of the season, he said, I have never thought of myself as John Greig, I have always thought of myself as John Greig of Rangers. He even postponed his wedding to play a game for Rangers. And he really has been that lovely cliche, a marvellous servant of the club. And I'm sure he did what he considered to be the right thing and take the embarrassment away from people who might subsequently have had to push him.
It's obviously going to be a man of special character to succeed him.
I think you must have a short list of 3. Alec Ferguson would be at the top of it, obviously the front runner, European Cup Winners' Cup Championship with Aberdeen and all that sort of thing. Don't discount Jim McLean at Dundee United because they're champions and he's been a very successful manager. And I think Jock Wallace at Motherwell, he might just fancy another chance at going back to Ibrox.
Alec Ferguson said this afternoon, no comment. That's significant?
I think that's rather typical of football managers when jobs are up for grabs. I noticed he didn't say no. It's interesting, when Celtic needed a successor, they went to Aberdeen and got Billy McNeil. And it seems that old firm teams now poached from Aberdeen. I'm certain Ferguson will be uppermost in their minds of the Rangers board.
Would there be difficulty in attracting a top-class manager, somebody from outside Scotland, say from England, because of the special conditions that are needed for the job in Ibrox?
Well, I think any new manager is going to say to himself, if I'm going to be judged a success as a manager, is it right for me to put my career at risk with one hand held behind my back, i.e. that I can only sign people that went to certain schools? And I think that might be the case of any manager, be it a Scot or be it an Englishman. I think it will be a Scot who goes to Ibrox and succeeds John Greig, that he won't want to be shackled by anything whatsoever to stop him from signing the players that he wants to sign.
Would a Rangers manager really have a free hand to choose any player that he wants?
Well, I think that the strong managers will say that is the way we want it. That is the way it's going to be. And I think Rangers are going to have to face up to that fact, and I hope face up to it honestly and courageously and get the right man, because Scotland does need Rangers going well. They haven't been going well over the last few years. Let's get the right team at Ibrox and make it 4 strong clubs at the top of the league. And let's forget all this nonsense about what school you went to.
Well, they say they're going to take a time to reach a decision. We'll know, however, in the days now opening. Ian Archer, thanks very much.
That report on those dramatic events at Ibrox today was compiled by Graham Stewart, whose report you heard earlier, and Alan Sawnby, who was talking to Ian Archer.
Some better goal was to come in the second half. Running on to a perfect lob from David Odds, Johnston showed marvellous skill and control, dismissing the challenge of his close marker and slamming the ball home. He came close to getting a hat-trick, which would have seemed almost inconceivable at the start of the match. However, he suffered cramp and had to be substituted. The response from the crowd summed up his performance.
And this is Sports Extra with a guide to what's happening in sport this weekend. It's already a weekend dominated by the resignation of John Greig, but we'll have a preview of all the football action on the field, and we'll also have pictures from the Ayr International Curling Championship and meet the man who could be Scottish Rally Champion on Saturday night.
And I'll be talking about the old...
Probably heard John Greig resigned as manager of Rangers this morning. He saw his team win their League Cup tie with Hearts on Wednesday, but that result obviously did nothing to lessen the enormous pressure that had built up over the last weeks. Those Ibrox problems and the bad run at Parkhead have dominated attention recently, and in the meantime, the men from the East have just got stronger. The table shows only one West club in the top 5, Celtic third on 12 points, and Rangers with 3 wins out of 9, trailing 6th on 7 points. Motherwell are 8th with 5, and 2 of that total will be remembered as points that perhaps prompted John Greig to go. The league business continues as usual tomorrow, though, and the leaders Dundee United make the trip to Fir Park. A shock, they have to lift themselves for the journey to Love Street. They do have the memory of a midweek victory to help their morale in the League Cup tie against Hearts on Wednesday night.
Ferguson keeps it in. Well, that's fine play again in the flank. And the goal goes in, created by Ferguson and scored by Prince. Ferguson with the free kick. And again, the woodwork saves Hearts. No, it's gone in at last. And it's Big Dave Mitchell who does it.
Tommy McLean, the interim manager at Ibrox, will have new signing Jimmy Nicholl available for the St Mirren game. The 5th Premier...
Reminded us only last week of just how much the balance of power in Scottish football has now moved away from the old firm of Rangers and Celtic.
Rangers manager John Greig yesterday. It came after 23 years service as player, captain and manager. And Ian Archer, in our Glasgow studios, I'm sure it's been a dramatic 24 hours up there.
Dramatic at the end, Ian, certainly, but it wasn't the biggest surprise in the world, really. I don't think John Greig will look back on his 5 years as manager as the happiest time of his life. And when the media was called to Ibrox yesterday, he didn't expect coffee, biscuits and a nice little chat. Greig was obviously the name on the agenda. Chairman Ray Simpson took just 13 words to sever a connection that had started back in 1960. Greig had resigned, he said,
The club, he said, regretted it. Well, Greig did resign off his own bat. There was none of that Rommel business of being left on your own for 5 minutes with the gun. And he did it because he thought it was best for a club he'd served for 18 years as a player, a career which ended in triumph.
That's it. Rangers have won, and John Greig has his 6th winner's medal. The remarkable man who has just capped 18 seasons at Ibrox, playing in his 73rd Scottish Cup tie, and Jock Wallace, the Rangers manager, saying well done to all the players. There is the face of a very, very happy man. So these scenes of tremendous jubilation, particularly among the Rangers fans, as Rangers clinch the treble for the 2nd time in 3 years, which really is a very, very fine performance.
The Scottish Cup final of 1978, bringing a treble for Rangers. Weeks later, Greig was manager. It's daft, really. Greig, the player, was tough, uncompromising, and never shirked a tackle or a challenge. Yet his own Rangers sides never quite had those virtues. Already they're 7 points behind Dundee United in the Premier League. They take only a goal lead to Porto in Europe next week. The protesters have been gathering outside Ibrox in recent weeks, and they were there again last Saturday when Motherwell beat them and persuaded Greig there wasn't much more he could do.
Mitchell, good turn. That's for McKinnon. Henderson came to meet him. There's Sandy Clark, and that's a penalty kick. McCoist against Walker. Great out from Walker, but it's 1-0 to Rangers.
Wallace. It was his departure from Rangers in 1978 which sent Greig hurtling from the dressing room to the manager's office. Will Wallace go back? Some fans no doubt would like it, but maybe Big Jock would want some sort of guarantees of managerial independence before trying a second time round. And despite the fact Wallace brought them 2 trebles, he isn't the favourite. Alex Ferguson of Aberdeen is the front runner. He played for Rangers, he was born just round the corner from Ibrox, and he's the man the majority of supporters expect to be installed. There's one big question mark, though. Would Fergie go along with what obviously is Rangers' continuing practice and only sign Protestants? Or would he, as an independent-minded guy, demand he signs just who he wants? Well, I make Ferguson the favourite, and if Rangers act quickly and Ferguson's there, what a week to start with. That European match and Celtic in an Old Firm game next Saturday.
OK, thank you, Ian. And we stay in Scotland for our final story. And you might remember last week when Hearts goalkeeper Henry Smith pulled off a series of tremendous saves against Celtic. But Jimmy Greaves doubted that he was a Scot with a name like Smith and asked to see his birth certificate. And now, Greavsie, you might still be in doubt about Henry's nationality, but here's a special message from Henry and his Hearts teammates to you.
10 seconds.
Jimmy, that was Scottish. And there it is, the actual birth certificate. Oh, and by the way, Jimmy, the boys have got a message for you.
I love it. I love it. I'm still actually not too convinced about this birth certificate, Ian, because Alan Gilzine came down from a place called Cooper Angus, which I understand to be a cave in the Cairngorms, and he gave his birth certificate, and he had to be older than what he was, and he said he didn't count the war years, and he didn't say which war. But thank the lads very much. I'm very pleased for their acknowledgement.
Well, that lad actually... Now, this used to be a family show, and the whole thing has gone to pot.
Yes, I'm sorry about that, Sam. Cheers.
OK, and see you again next week, Jim.
Yeah, will do, yeah, lovely.
OK, lovely.
Yeah.
And good luck, by the way, to all our teams who are competing in Europe next week. Well, I'll see you next Saturday, and with that, I'll hand you back.
Tonight's programme. Football, of course, has extended from the sports to the news pages this weekend. But in the midst of all the...
It's becoming clear that there's going to be no immediate decision. There certainly will be no weekend appointment, and it looks as if Rangers will go to Porto without a manager. It also looks as if Rangers were caught unawares by the timing of John Greig's resignation, thus leaving them in a complex situation. Well, tonight we examine John's record at Ibrox and look at a man who was not unaware of what ultimately might befall him.
Survived for a long time here with pressure, so I'm used to it by now.
Meanwhile, the touring...
Now, a quarter of a century of devotion to a club makes a man something of an institution in his own right. He thoroughly deserves a tag as one of the greatest Rangers of all time. Without him, the club would certainly not have won their greatest victory, the Cup Winners' Cup in Barcelona in 1972.
Ibrox. Jardins in.
No whistle. Dave Smith has it towards Colin Steen. Here's Steen. It's a goal. It's a goal by Steen. What a goal. Alfie Conn. John Greig. Here's Dave Smith. Smith going up. It's a good ball. It's a goal. It's a goal by Willie Johnston. Rangers will be quite content to keep possession of the ball into the second half, as long as that score remains. Steen, and here's Willie Johnston with a chance, and it's a goal. It's a goal by Johnston, right out of the blue.
Greig led by example on the field, and the total devotion to the club endeared him to Rangers supporters who during the late 60s and early 70s might have seen their team slide into further obscurity, but for the unflagging spirit of Greig. There were some games I watched when you began to feel that Rangers were a one-man team, and without Greig there would have been further disintegration.
Here's Greig coming in, on to Brand. Greig again, it's a goal, and that makes it 3.
Now John Greig, a beautiful ball towards O'Hara. He's on his own. There's McLean coming up. Looking for support inside. Cross not hard enough. John Greig. Whoa, what a goal! Scott missing out on that. Here's McLean to John Greig. What a goal!
Play by Russell. Greig might think about a shot. Plays a shot one. Greig still going and scoring!
He scored 141 goals for his club, but his natural inclination to lead others was recognised by Scotland, and I'm sure there isn't a soul who was there at Hampden Park that night in 1965 who will ever forget the dying seconds in which Greig performed a rescue act for Scotland that made a certain gentleman, Jock Steen by name, dance the Scottish on the edge of the pitch.
2 minutes to go and there's still no scoring. It's Bremner. Greig, he's never been out of your picture in the last 10 minutes. Baxter. It's a goal! A goal to Greig! 2 minutes to go!
Hindsight, as someone once said, has 20/20 vision, and how clear it seems now that somebody at Ibrox made a monumental mistake in assuming that Greig's capacities as a player warranted immediate transference to the managerial seat. There was to be no acting as can boy, no serving of apprenticeship. It was straight into the hot seat after he led Rangers to the Scottish Cup final victory. It was his last game as a Rangers player.
Johnston looking for support. Finds it in Russell. There's Alec McDonald. It's there. McLean does well to sweep that in. There's Johnston. Yes. And there is John Greig with Rankin Grimshaw. With the red, white and blue ribbons, Bruce Milan in the background.
And then on to 5 years as a And then on to 5 years as a manager, which brought its fair share of success. 2 Scottish Cups, 2 Scottish League Cups, and in Europe in 1979 he took Rangers to the quarter-finals of the Cup Winners' Cup, only to be knocked out by a 1-goal margin. But despite those isolated achievements, a feeling amongst their more discerning supporters was that Rangers were on the wrong track. No nearer winning the championship, no nearer establishing themselves as a credible European side despite spending a king's ransom on new players. And now in the past month, they've reached rock bottom. A manager has to be answerable to that situation. John Greig had to go. Now, his amiable nature didn't help. He was too soft in some players who should have been booted right over the Govan stand into the Clyde, not let back in again. Just before the cup final of last year, John was trying to play down the gravity of his personal situation. Yet his words carried a hint of facing up to the inevitable.
Well, I'm not one for making excuses, Archie, but two things. We're in a transitional period, and I've never known injuries like the injuries we've had this season to key players. It's been one of these years where we've had to put up with even players that are bought like Craig Patterson, been out for 3.5 months. We just didn't seem to get back on the road after we lost our way, after going 23 games without defeat.
A vast but impatient support doesn't make life at all easy for John Greig.
Pressure's a hard word to define, Archie. Pressure to me is, as I've said before, people that's got relations or something lying in the hospital with heart attacks or recovering from serious illness. We're still playing a sport, and I like to believe it's still a sport, although business has a lot to do with it, and success has a lot to do with it, and there's nobody more aware of it than I am.
Well, some of you supporters, it's life or death.
Well, it's life or death, of course it is. It's the way I approach it as well, but pressure, I don't like using the word pressure.
Do you like pressure?
Well, I've survived for a long time here with pressure, so I'm used to it by now.
And so tonight, all kinds of conjecturing is going on about his successor. But you know, Rangers could be at a turning point in the history. They need more than a new manager. There is a malaise there which is bitten deeply into the club, and to use words from another context, the winds of change ought to blow through every nook and cranny in Ibrox. But how on earth can any self-respecting professional in the game think of taking on a task of making Rangers a great European team again when they're asked to handicap themselves with a tradition that means the acceptance of, say, a brilliant striker or brilliant sweeper is dependent on an accident of birth that has taken them into a religion that's found unacceptable? That task is like saying to someone, look, we want you to swim a length of the pool. We want you to do it in record time. We want you to get first prize, but before you dive in, here's a 20-pound lead weight for around your neck. Good luck. Now, really, would people stop going to Ibrox if they found a Catholic boy who could score 40 goals a season for them? Probably some or less. But I'm convinced that the vast majority of Rangers supporters are now more bitterly opposed to mediocrity than to religious ritual. The songs and the colours needn't vanish, but if anybody connected with the club thinks they can return to greatness without giving their new man total and unfettered control of whom he brings to Ibrox, then they're living in a cloud cuckoo land where history dwells heavily on the mind and cupboards have a habit of remaining bare.
1-0 puts Rangers out of the UEFA Cup.
The manager retired or resigned last week, and of course off they went to Portugal managerless, with a lot on their minds, and of course it ended with the inevitable conclusion.
The goal which eliminated Rangers was the result of two dreadful defensive errors, giving an easy opening to Porto's Fernando Gomez, who last season was the top goal scorer in European football.
Well, actually, that wasn't a bad result, but out of the European Cup Winners' Cup they went. Now, of course, the news about Rangers isn't purely about football, about that vacancy left by John Greig. Now, in the middle of the week, everybody thought, particularly the media, that the favourite was Alec Ferguson of Aberdeen, but Alec went up and signed a 5-year contract, and that is not at all surprising because he's been doing marvellously well. That's a great combination there. And, you know, the only public move made by Rangers, the first target, was for the manager of Dundee United, Jim McLean. Now, that may not seem all that surprising on the surface, because after all, he won the championship with Dundee United last season. He's proved his worth. He is assistant manager to the national team with Jock Wallace. He's a great character, a personality in his own way. Sometimes people think he's very dour, but he's totally devoted. It's a sort of 18-hour football day for Jim McLean. But it's the conditions applied to this that matter and make it that Rangers might well be on the brink of a revolution. Now, in case you don't realise it, if Pelly had turned up at Ibrox in the past and stood on a doorstep and said, here I am your salvation, he perhaps would have got a very warm welcome and then shown the door again because of the school he went to and his religious persuasion, because Rangers, let's face it, just simply did not sign Catholics. Now then, if they go for Jim McLean, they're going for a man who, if he were guaranteed a goal a game, would sign a one-legged Trappist monk. So they must have realised that McLean will ask for carte blanche. He'll ask for total, untrammelled control of the team selection, and that means he'll sign anybody. Now, I assume, I haven't seen the conditions, I assume that Rangers know that. I assume that the new Rangers board, with a new chairman probably next week, have faced up to the fact that they're on the verge of a revolution, and it is very intriguing to know if the Rangers supporters will accept this. I could not say categorically that McLean will go to Ibrox, but all the indications are that he will, and that we are on the verge of a transformation and a new dawn for Rangers Football Club. But this season, Scottish football in the Premier Division, Marx Brothers' production of the Wall Street crash, has begun to sort out its financial embarrassments and to play well. And training in the backyard of rugby's Holy of Holies, Murrayfield, is a mildly irreverent touch you might associate with the two very energetic men designing the new Hearts model, Alec MacDonald and Sandy Jardine. MacDonald is player-manager, and some people think he's lost none of the vision he displayed with Rangers.
And there's a goal! Alec MacDonald.
His assistant player-manager is one of the most famous of all Rangers, Sandy Jardine.
MacDonald with a chance. Jardine, yes!
On the evidence of what we saw on our visit to Tynecastle, they are engendering a buoyant atmosphere that's taken the club to within 1 point of leaders Aberdeen in a season that is crucial to their very existence. Now, Sandy, the whole aspect, of course, of coming here was to revive Hearts, because they're one of the giants of Scottish football. Do you feel you're on the right road now?
Oh, we're on the right road, but it's a long road. We've just started on the road. It'll take a few years, really, to get the club back up where we wanted to get it. But we've made a good start, and we've just got to keep it going.
Have you got, a healthy relationship in the sense that you can have a needle with each other and get on and know that it's productive?
Oh, aye. I mean, we have our arguments.
Have you fallen out?
Well, I wouldn't say we've fallen out. We've had a wee tiff, haven't we?
When you look at the player list, you're not faced solely with callow youth. MacDonald has in fact plumbed for a backbone of great experience. Players who have made their names with other clubs. Reputations gained more than a few years ago.
Bourne on his own. Aberdeen defence trying to get back to close him down. What a goal!
Jimmy's tremendous for the lads, you know. He helps young John tremendously up front. They work well together, and it's important that John learns from Jimmy.
Sometimes do you get little nostalgic twinges for the great days of
Well, I don't think you can look back in this game. You've always got to look forward. We enjoyed our time at Ibrox, but that's behind us now, and we've got to look forward.
Hearts have potentially the third biggest support in Scotland, but it's been undernourished for 2 decades. Yet when the teams started to do this sort of thing last year, they all began to come back again and to take Hearts rather more seriously than just an Edinburgh fringe activity. And over 20,000 people will be at Easter Road, Edinburgh today to see a vicious local derby between these two things. Well, vicious perhaps isn't the right word, a very enthralling derby between these two teams. And if you look at the Premier Division, you can probably see how well Hearts have done. There they are, well up there. Just 1 point behind Aberdeen, but of course there are a cluster of teams. It's going to be a very exciting derby day, but I don't think these league positions will alter all that much by 4:45.
Thanks, Archie. It's a very interesting scene in Scotland at the moment. Time now for the warning for Spurs, as it involves Bayern Munich in the dark shirts and Karl-Heinz Rummenigge. Now, the linesman clearly indicates a free kick against Bayern, but the referee disagreed and overruled his colleague. Watch next for the Nuremberg keeper coming into shot to retrieve the ball. Suddenly he realises the free kick has been given to Bayern and that he's left stranded out of his goal. And that's something you can't afford to do against the great Karl-Heinz Rummenigge. Finally, 2 of the best goals.
Winners' Cup went out to a goal by Gomez of Porto. 2-2 the final aggregate, but Porto through on the away goal they scored at Ibrox.
So Rangers out, but Aberdeen through, and so too are Manchester United.
Politics is a long time, but a week in Scottish football has seemed like an eternity. You know, Ian, if the Yanks had invaded Russia itself and not just tiny Grenada, they still wouldn't have made the front pages. It's been Rangers all the way. Alex Ferguson was the man that Rangers wanted, but Aberdeen stepped in promptly, offered him wages of £50,000 a year for the next 5 years, so Fergie stays at Pittodrie. Well, it's Derby Day all over Scotland, not just here at Ibrox, but also in Edinburgh and Dundee. But the major talking point on all those terraces, will Rangers get the new man on their shopping list, Jim McLean of Dundee United, the champions? He sees the Ibrox board tomorrow. He's thinking about it. The chances of him taking it, I'd say better than 50-50. One thing in his favour, Rangers have said a new manager can sign any new players. Nothing unusual in that, you might think. But in Rangers' case, it means a new manager could sign a Catholic. It's crazy to be talking about religion on a football programme, isn't it? But that's the way it is. Rangers possibly set to sign a Catholic and move into the 20th century.
Well, that's good news indeed, Ian. And today, Rangers will be hoping to end a run of 6 league meetings against Celtic without a win. The last game at Ibrox Park was on the final day of last season, when Celtic again prevailed.
Almost 30 yards out. That one on his line. Cooper. Thumps it in as a flick, and it's a goal. Came off Clark. Put in the way by Aiken. Knocked down, chance for McKinnon. That was deflected. It's a goal. McKinnon's shot deflected by Clark. 2-0, 23 minutes. Robin through to the edge of the box, but stay back to Robin. A brilliant move. Referee indicating a penalty, I think, for that challenge. Peter McCoy facing Charlie Nicholas. 2-1. Beautifully struck away by Nicholas. Aiken and McKinnon at the post. Robin with a floater, fighting a back header. It's in! McAdam scores. So Celtic's free kick. Proven. McGarvey. Goal! Superb free kick. Magnificent header. Celtic down 2-0 at one point. Lead 3-2. 5 minutes left. Dawson trying a pass back, picked up by McLeod. Brought down by Dawson. Penalty kick. His first kick went to McCoy's right. Where will his second one go? Same place. McCoy nearly got it.
Well, after seeing Celtic on Wednesday, I've got to fancy him in that match today. Well, finally, news of a young player who's been linked with Rangers and a host of other top clubs around Europe, including Aberdeen and Liverpool. Jim Rosenthal was among the watching scouts when he appeared at Crystal Palace on Tuesday night.
This is Siggy Johnson, who at the age of 17 has represented his country, Iceland, at every level. He's one of the youngest internationals ever, only 16 when he played in the European Championship against Malta. He's still at school, but his performances for his club at Cranes against Aberdeen in the Cup Winners' Cup intensified the battle for his signature. Just 300 people at Crystal Palace on Tuesday for the Youth International, including England manager Bobby Robson and representatives of many top clubs. Iceland already 3 down after the first leg in Reykjavik. At international level, I suppose you get used to that when you wear an Icelandic shirt. Siggy's something of a Steve Cram lookalike. He's got a really classy touch on the ball, and he's already shown that he can look after himself as well. England manager Dave Sexton's well aware of that. Siggy Johnson, though, inspired all of Iceland's best chances, but really his teammates weren't in the same class. And naturally enough, at times, he tried to do it all himself and occasionally very nearly succeeded. But England repeated their 3-goal victory and qualified for next year's finals in Russia. Siggy Johnson, though, had shown his quality once again.
Well, I've seen him over the last 2 years, Jim, and his quality to me is he's got vision. He's 2 feet, he's good in the air, pass the ball. To me, for a youngster of his age, he's got more than I've ever seen with a young kid at that age for many years.
What do you feel are the chances of Siggy coming to Britain to play?
Well, at the moment, I think it's a 60-40 situation. Whether he comes to Scotland or England, I don't really know. But I think if he does come to Britain, it will be Scotland. If he doesn't come to Scotland, then I'm afraid it's going to be the continent, which there are a few players from Iceland over the last few years who have played for various teams in the continent, and I'm just hoping that he's not the next one to go with them.
What do you feel about all the clubs all over Europe who are showing such an interest in you?
It's a big pressure. Everybody wants me. Everybody is calling. Many clubs. I don't know. I'm gonna wait, have some competition if I can, like Michael Laudrup did. I don't know.
Well, if he's half as good as Michael Laudrup, he'll be some player indeed. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the programme.
Then is Ibrox Stadium. The contrasting midweek fortunes of both Rangers and Celtic irrelevant.
Well, it stayed that way, 2-1. So a Celtic win and more turmoil for Rangers, still looking for a manager and hoping the talks with Jim McLean today will find him a successor to John Greig. Graham will be reporting on that later. There was some humour at Ibrox yesterday, even in defeat, though. Was there going to be another demonstration? Well, who would they demonstrate against? Someone asked. The manager is sacked, was the reply. Well, one thing became clear in the last week. Whoever takes over seems to be able to sign anyone for Rangers, including Catholics. Does the Reverend James Curry, a staunch supporter and a regular attender at Rangers rallies, agree with that? James Curry, you've got friends in high places, I know. Do you take seriously these suggestions in the last week that Rangers are about to change their policy?
Well, I'm very much speaking for myself, Ian. You know, I've no right to speak for the club or anything like that. But I've always stood by the Waddle thesis that Rangers will sign anyone. And I certainly would hope that the time has come when we will sign anyone that people won't be asked what their religion is. We'll just, if they're good players, they'll be signed. I don't think it's just as simple as all that, though, Ian.
Well, you see, critics will say that Willie Waddle made that statement in 1975, that the club was open to people regardless of religion, and yet still it is an all-Protestant side. I mean, has it not been a good enough player who's a Catholic in the last 8 years?
I'd like to see Frank McGarvey playing at Ibrox, I really would. But what I must say is this, that there's two sides to it. If a boy's a good player and he's a Roman Catholic, he's going to want to play for Celtic. If I certainly would anyway. I would want to play for Celtic in that circumstance. And I understand that there have been Roman Catholics who've been signed by Rangers provisionally, and such was life for them with their pals, that the provisional signing had to be cancelled. Now, I don't want to go any further than that. So, I mean, there's two sides to it. Who's going to go and play for Rangers when he can play for Celtic, the best team associated with the Roman Catholic?
Well, of course, over the years, I mean, Danny McGrain, it's a well-known fact, and Kenny Dalglish were both Rangers supporters who happily went and played for Celtic. Now, why can't somebody who might be attracted to Celtic go and play for Rangers?
Well, why not? But the thing that worries me, I think there's a whole lot of muckraking about this. I really honestly do. And I think you, the press, have a lot to blame because you play it up all the time, all this sign. If you just leave it quietly, then they would sign. Maybe we'll get McGarvey and another to come in and play for us, and then we could. That was just, if we had McGarvey and Burns, we would have won the game yesterday.
But what do you say to the argument, which was, I was talking to a former Rangers player this morning, and a reasonable, nice guy, who thought that if Catholics signed for Rangers, it would be the end of the club because the support would not tolerate watching that kind of a side.
Oh, I don't agree with that. There are some hooligans. There's a small fringe of what you might call the fanatics. But no, I don't agree with that at all. Rangers are Rangers. Look at the wonderful support we had yesterday, even in defeat. I mean, it showed you in the film some of them leaving, but think of the thousands who stayed and they were cheering them on at the end. I thought it was wonderful. And to see Dave McKinnon coming off the park and clapping the support, I thought that was great. I think Rangers are still a great team. I won't say a single word against them. I really won't. I think they're marvellous. And I've got a blue nose and I'm not ashamed of it.
And that blue nose would stay a blue nose if a new manager came along and you found that practice, shall we say, rather than policy, had been altered and the side reflected players of both religions.
I must say, I don't like bigotry at any time, on any side. I really don't like it at all, Ian. I'm not bigoted in my own church life, not in the slightest, and I don't like bigotry in sport. I'm not prepared to admit that there is bigotry in sport. I really think the time has come that let's have them, good players, and the Rangers need them, certainly do.
James Curry, very many thanks.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, gentlemen. Well, the big news today is that there's still no news of whether Jim McLean will be the next manager of Rangers. McLean arrived at Ibrox before 11 this morning and spoke to the Rangers board for over 3 hours before emerging around 2:15. He had nothing to say then, except that the chairman of Rangers would be making a statement. Well, Ray Simpson then did come out of the Ibrox stand, but it was only to tell the waiting pressman that there was no statement from Rangers. He would only say that the board had been involved in conversation with Jim McLean. So now it seems it's all up to the United United manager. He's heard what Rangers have to offer. Now he and his family have to make their decision. If he says yes to Rangers, there's no doubt that the club will be getting a manager and motivator of the highest class. A man who in his 13 years with Dundee United has turned them from being just another small provincial side into one of Europe's best. The Jim McLean success story at Tannadice had its finest chapter last May when Dundee United beat Dundee 2-1 at Dens to win the Premier League Championship. Into a successful side, no doubt on the way to even more honours. Now he has to decide whether to stay at Tannadice or leave them to take on the massive challenge of rebuilding Rangers into a power they once were. It will surely be one of the hardest of his football life.
Dominates the news tonight in its search for a manager. Jock Wallace, the Motherwell manager, has been refused permission to speak to the Rangers directors. Team news, and for the latest on that managerial vacancy, here's Jim White.
Thanks, Haig. Motherwell manager Jock Wallace had a round of golf today as fresh rumours suggested that he will soon become the next manager of Rangers Football Club. Rangers now want to speak to Wallace, but latest information suggests that Motherwell will let no such discussion take place. Both Motherwell and Rangers were remaining tight-lipped tonight over that approach. Wallace, of course, led Rangers to 2 trebles in 3 years as manager before his departure to Leicester City. But Motherwell chairman Bill Dickey said today that Wallace was the Fir Park manager and that the club would be fighting hard to keep him. Jock Wallace is said to be the choice of the fans in the light of previous no thank yous from Alex Ferguson and Jim McLean. Meanwhile, earlier today, there's been no end of conjecture as to who might take the Ibrox hot seat. Today's newspapers told us that names like Bingham, Docherty, Jack Charlton and Wallace might all be names in that hat. But it's become clear that Wallace now looks to be the outright favourite. Meanwhile, the Ibrox players under caretaker manager Tommy McLean travel to Clydebank in Section 2 of the League Cup tonight. Their old firm rivals Celtic take on Ayr
job at Rangers, and it looks as though the club may have their man within 24 hours at least. Jock Wallace is a target, of course, in spite of his being third choice, and he has met with the Ibrox board. Details are expected shortly. We'll have a full report, of course, as details come in on today's developments. Later, Motherwell manager is the man the Rangers board definitely want, and there's no doubt that Wallace will accept if the terms are right. With a report on today's developments, here's our sports correspondent, Graham Stewart.
Jock Wallace, the man Rangers want as their new manager, is at Ibrox speaking to the Rangers board at this moment. If Wallace and Rangers reach agreement, then it will be up to the boards of the 2 clubs involved to meet to finalise the return of Jock Wallace to Rangers. So after days of uncertainty, it's looking likely that Rangers have got the man they want as manager. Wallace, who is in fact the third choice for the job, is 15 months into a 10-year contract at Motherwell, and a substantial compensation sum would have to be paid to the club by Rangers, but that hasn't put them off. And Jock Wallace could well be in charge of the Rangers team for this Saturday's difficult match against Aberdeen. Well, while all this intrigue has been going on, the man at the centre of it has been getting on with the business of football, as Jim White reports.
It was business as usual earlier today for Jock Wallace as he looked after a Motherwell training session at Fir Park. Following Motherwell's 4-2 defeat at the hands of Morton last night, a group of Fir Park supporters cynically called for the manager's move to Rangers to hurriedly go ahead. Then late this afternoon, those fans' wishes appeared to be on the brink of coming true. Tonight, Wallace and Rangers have had talks, as at last it became clear that he's now set to return to the Ibrox hot seat. Later, Motherwell chairman Bill Dickey confirmed that the Fir Park club had indeed given Rangers permission to approach their manager. So it now looks like it's no longer a case of will he or won't he. Simply, what terms are involved?
Well, Jock Wallace left the Rangers job under mysterious circumstances back in 1978, just after the club had won their second treble of League, Scottish Cup and League Cup under him. Gordon Smith it was who scored the goal that won the 1978 League Cup in extra time. And Rangers were on their way to a repeat of their treble-winning feat of 1976. They won the Scottish Cup against Aberdeen, Derek Johnson scoring the winner. And Jock Wallace's face at the end of that match says it all. But soon Wallace was to leave Ibrox under, as I said, mysterious circumstances, to go to Leicester while John Greig took over the manager's job.
Well, Rangers to me are something special. They always shall be. To do a treble once is a more of it when we done it twice. The same lads, we done it together. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a tremendous feeling I have towards them. But that part of my life's over now, and I've got to get on with me building Leicester.
Coughlin's cross.
Wallace at Leicester, but then it was back to Scotland, to Fir Park and the Motherwell job, which has had its triumphs too, like beating Celtic last season here and staying up for another term in the Premier League. So once the talking is over, the way should be set for the return of a highly successful and committed man to the Rangers manager's job. Jock Wallace will spare no effort in putting the club back to the top, but even he is going to have a very hard fight ahead to get a team to match their Ibrox stadium.
That report on today's events at Ibrox was compiled by Jim White and Graham Stewart.
Final chapter in the Rangers managerial story, and a look ahead to another excellent list of weekend fixtures. Ian Anderson will be previewing the Scotland-New Zealand international on and off the park. Here's Graham Stewart with his roundup.
Yes, Rangers have got their man at last, as you saw in Scotland today, and 2 weeks to the day after John Greig quit Ibrox, Jock Wallace was reporting for duty at the club he left 5 years before. The size of the task Wallace is taking on is obvious from the Premier table, which shows Rangers in joint second bottom place on 7 points, 10 behind the leaders Aberdeen. And with a match at Pittodrie tomorrow, then Dundee United coming to Ibrox next Saturday, the first points for Rangers under Wallace are going to be very hard to come by. But Jock Wallace loves a challenge, and he'll be trying all he knows to motivate the players that have lost 4 league games in a row now, the last one being the most painful at Ibrox against Celtic.
Head flick on, the chance. It's in the net. Forced in by Sandy Clark. And Rangers get a late lifeline with 3.5 minutes left for play.
But 2-1 it stayed. Well, Jock Wallace couldn't have picked a more difficult match for his return to the helm at Ibrox. Aberdeen at Pittodrie, with the Dons top of the league and named this week by a magazine as Europe's top team, and with their best players showing last season's form once again, especially in the case of Peter Weir, who after much prompting by manager Alec Ferguson is producing the expected goods. Side is without Sandy Clark and Robert Pritz, who are both injured. The club Jock Wallace has left, Motherwell, have to play Celtic at Parkhead for the last 2 weeks, and has had an influence on the park too. Last Saturday, Dundee United took the field against neighbours Dundee, worried by the thought that they were going to lose their manager, Jim McLean, to Rangers, and that worry perhaps contributed to a 1-0 defeat. But now there are no doubts about the future of McLean, and United take on St Johnstone.
Named Team of the Year, and Rangers who at last have found a new manager. So let's hear now from Archie McPherson.
Bob, if we'd been able to serialise the happenings concerning Glasgow Rangers over the past fortnight, we'd have come up with a combination of dynasty, Dallas and a little bit of war and peace thrown in, as Rangers strove to get the manager. Well, eventually they succeeded, and they brought back to Ibrox a man who twice won the treble for them in 1976 and 78, Mr. Jock Wallace, who's reputed to be one of the highest paid men in the business now. Now, Jock, honestly, how did you feel when you walked up the marble staircase towards that office, which you know only too well?
Well, it was a tremendous feeling. It sunk into me more yesterday after the training when I was in the tracksuit and things like that. I had spoken to the players and done a bit of coaching work. But Rangers and Ibrox, to me, I've arrived at my Mecca. I've arrived for I felt as if I'd never left the place, Archie, you know.
Did you always keep Rangers in your heart, despite doing jobs for various Motherwell and Leicester?
I've given everything to Leicester City and Motherwell that I could possibly do, but my heart was my love was always at Rangers.
But you couldn't, in your wildest dreams, have imagined you would end up there.
I never thought about that. I never even had ambitions. Or John Greig was the manager of Rangers, you know, at that particular time, and I have never taken a job when there's been a manager in a job, if you understand the implications of that one.
Yeah. In other words, you weren't hoping that John Greig would fail, so you would step in.
No, I mean that is no. I never even thought about that. You know, I was upset that and sad that the lad had to resign. You know, he was a good friend of mine.
Well, tell me this: if that is the case, how did you feel about people describing you as the third choice when other 2 Scottish managers' names were linked with the job?
Well, they lads have had their own reasons for refusing the job. I was quite delighted that they did refuse the job. It gave me a chance to get the job, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here.
But didn't you feel a little bit downgraded as a result of that?
No way. They refused the job for their own reasons. I don't know what the reasons are. I'm not even interested, and I won't ask them. I'm just glad they didn't take the job. And I've said that to a lot of people, and I mean that sincerely.
Now, you know the implications of you taking this job because it has been said that Rangers are on the brink of a new era and that they will sign, and you'll be given the power to sign anybody you like, a Mohammedan, a Jew, a Catholic, and whatever. Now, are you aware of the consequences of that?
Yes, I'm fully aware of that. I'm just here to make Rangers a good football team. I'll make a point to you. When we were done the trebles, nobody talked about any sectarianism in the club then, or because I think they've had a bad time. The media or whoever have projected this thing, and I think it's as far as I'm concerned, if the boy can play and he wants to play for Rangers, I'll have him. And it won't matter two hoots what school he went to, what church he goes to, or anything like that. If he is good enough and wants to play, I mean that's a tremendous. I want to be at Rangers, and I only want players that want to play for that blue jersey.
How do you honestly think, because you're a great favourite on the terracings, Jock, how do you honestly think the Rangers support would react? Would they back you? You suddenly sign somebody who was quite obviously a Roman Catholic.
Well, they would have to. They would have to back me because it's for the Rangers. It's for to make that team. I want to see that stadium full week after week. We have a tremendous support, a tremendous following. I would think the best travelling support in the world. Celtic and Rangers have been noted for that down the years. I mean, Aberdeen and Dundee United are tremendous teams at this moment in time, but they don't have a travelling support like Rangers and Celtic. And Rangers' travelling support has dwindled because of the poor performances recently and the bad press they've been getting. While Celtic has maintained its thing. So we've got to get the show on the road and make Rangers impact in Scottish football, A, for the Rangers Football Club, and B, to get the travel support to other games.
And help Scottish football.
And help Scottish football in general.
Well, come on, how are you feeling? You're only an hour and a half or so away from kick-off. I think you're getting a bit edgy, aren't you?
Battle fever's really in my belly, I can tell you right now. Don't worry about that. Battle fever's on, son.
Thank you very much, Jock Wallace. Well, another honour has come to Scotland, and of course, as you heard Bob say, Aberdeen have been named European Team of the Year by a French publication with the blessing of UEFA. And why? Well, because of the style with which they won the Cup Winners' Cup against Real Madrid in Gothenburg.
In studios in Aberdeen. Well, in fact, I think Jock has a slight problem at the moment, but I think he's there. Good afternoon, Jock. Are you there?
Good afternoon, Ian.
Well, Jock, first of all, congratulations on your return to Rangers. You must be delighted.
Yes, I'm to say I'm delighted is put it in a small way.
Well, people down south here think it's amazing that a club such as Rangers have been turned down twice before you finally got the job. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm pretty glad about that, actually. I wouldn't have got the job unless they'd turned it down.
Well, why do you think they've turned it down, Jock? I mean, it's still surely one of the biggest jobs in football.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's the best job in football. Why they turn it down is their own reasons, but I would think they've got good teams. That last week's European ties between Rangers, between Celtic and Dundee United and Aberdeen was tremendous football. I sincerely believe that Scottish football's in for a tremendous time in Europe. Because of these three teams, the class and the standard of football they're playing.
Well, you left Rangers in a high, Jock. You just had won a treble. Now, of course, they're down the bottom of the Premier. They're out of Europe and really struggling. So you've got quite a job in your hands.
No, it's nothing new.
Well, were they like that when you took over the first time?
Nothing new for me to go and do a bit of troubleshooting and sorting things out and that, you know. I like it.
But they are in a bit of trouble, Jock.
Well, we'll sort that one out, won't we?
I mean, do you really think you can compete with the Aberdeens of the world now and the Dundee Uniteds?
Since you come back in 3 months and I'll tell you all about it, son.
Do you think it's as quick as that, Jock?
Well, they're good players. They just got to believe in themselves, haven't they? And I'll chase them up and down the field with a big hatchet and all that stuff. You know what I mean?
You've been given full control at Ibrox, which means that you can now sign a Catholic player. Now, that's a mandate that no other Rangers manager's ever had. And surely that's got to be good for you.
Well, no, the last time I was at Rangers, nobody ever said I couldn't sign one either. But I'll make a point to you.
Yeah?
When I was at Rangers winning trebles, nobody said that they were winning trebles because there were no Catholics to the team or anything like that. You know, people never mentioned religion. Now they're low and the media has gone and attacked the sectarian policy, if there was one at Rangers. If there was one. Nobody talked about religion then when we were winning, so it might be because the teams that are low. But I've signed Catholics, I think, importance, I think, for Leicester and Motherwell and other teams. It's never bothered me before, and it's not going to bother me now, I'll tell you that now.
Well, good luck again this afternoon, Jock. And by the way, Jimmy Greaves sends his regards as well.
Tell him you, man, I send my love.
OK.
Cheers.
I can confirm that they're just good friends. Well, that's it from Jimmy Greaves and myself this afternoon.
Jock Wallace, many congratulations on your appointment again as Rangers manager. What sort of response have you had from supporters?
Tremendous. Thursday night, all right, it was 2:30 and I got to bed. Phone calls from Canada, Toronto, America. My son's in university in America. All that kind of stuff, and it was pretty exciting.
In fact, Jock, realistically speaking, looking at the season 1983-84, Rangers are anchored near the bottom of the Premier Division. They're out of Europe. But what are your aims, realistically speaking?
The first thing is to get the players confident in each other again. I feel when a team's struggling and good players are struggling, they go individual, and I want to get them back as a team, and we discussed that yesterday, we'll discuss it again today, and that's the first object, to get them playing for Rangers again.
Now, Jock, you left Rangers after having won the treble for the second time. Your reasons for leaving have never ever been revealed. Are you now in a position to do so?
No.
It's simple as that?
No, I won't talk about that.
Well, let's move on now to the fact that there's been a tremendous emphasis in the media and indeed through Rangers Football Club themselves about the fact that you will have carte blanche to sign any player, no matter what religion.
That is correct. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, religion doesn't come into it. If they're good enough players to come to Rangers and they want to come to Rangers and I want them, I'll sign them.
Mind you, Jock, this sort of statement was made many years ago while you, in fact, were manager.
No.
Was there any bond put on you?
No, there's never been any pressure put on me to sign in. Just, I won't sign anybody. If I don't like him as a player, I won't sign him. It's as simple as that. I mean, if things go wrong, it's me who'll get the sack, not the directors or not the players. I'll get the sack. So I'll sign the players I want, and I don't care what they are, or who they are, or where they come from.
Well, in fact, looking at the Premier Division as a whole now, it's improved greatly since you were last manager of Rangers, with teams like Dundee United and Aberdeen coming very much to the fore. When you came back from Leicester, was the standard greatly improved in your opinion?
Well, to be frank, I wrote about this when I came back, and the standard of football in Scotland has improved at the top level, and all level, on top of the top level of the Premier League. The coaching is improved. I think the director of coaching, Roxburgh, has done a great job there. He's got the young men in Scotland coaching and thinking about the game. And there's still a great passion in Scotland for football. A great passion for young players and ambitious players. A lot of razzmatazz and written about the game. But there's still kids coming through who want to play football. And to answer your question in the sense that Aberdeen proved my point last year by going and winning the Cup Winners' Cup. To be truthful, I was disappointed that Dundee United didn't go further in their game. I think Jim would say that the game they got knocked out, they should have won. Celtic have done well in Europe, Rangers have done well in Europe over the piece, and this rubs off on players, and it rubs off on managers, and it rubs off on fans. They want to see good football. And I've only seen television clippings last week of Aberdeen, Dundee United and Celtic, and I thought the three teams were tremendous games. I mean, that was Real Madrid stuff from the three clubs, and if they play that every week, I think, Frank, if you look at the attendance of those clubs, they're getting good attendances because they're playing good football, and Rangers' attendance are down because they've not been playing good football. It's as simple as that.
Yes, in fact, if you look at the attendances, Jock, you have instant support, really. But will that support not be screaming for instant success? Is that not going to put additional pressure on you?
Well, I mean, I may have returned to Mecca, but I'm no God, you know. I'm his son, but just a wee bit to go yet, you know what I mean, Frank? Yeah. We'll be working hard to get his success as quickly as possible. And it's, I sincerely, I've worked with these lads for once, for an hour. I've spoken to them, and the mood in the camp is great right now. They know they've got to please me. They know they've got a hard man to please. But I will not lie to them. I won't cheat them, and I won't let them cheat me or cheat the fans. If they're not good enough, bye-bye, Purdy.
OK, so does that rule out immediate signings?
Yes.
It does?
Yes.
Jock Wallace, thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
John Wark of Ipswich to the Scotland squad for Wednesday's European Championship match against East Germany.
First news of those changes in the Rangers staff. Out goes Tommy McLean, John Greig's assistant, who ran the team while the board searched for a new manager. Out too goes Joe Mason, the reserve team manager. In comes the Falkirk manager, Alec Totten, who will be Jock Wallace's new assistant. He's expected to be at Ibrox in time for tomorrow's match against Dundee United. Even if United win tomorrow, the odds are against them overtaking Aberdeen at the top of the league.
Johnson could be back at Ibrox, playing his last game for United before returning to Chelsea. Well, Aberdeen are clear at the top of the Premier table, with Celtic on 18 and United on 17 points. Rangers, meanwhile, are joint second bottom after 1/3 of the season. That's a dangerous place to be.
McLean has decided that his managerial future does not lie with Rangers Football Club. McLean decided at midday today to stay at Tannadice with the side he has moulded out of nothing into the present league champions. Following his meeting with Rangers directors in Glasgow yesterday, the Dundee United boss described his soul-searching as nightmarish. He didn't get a wink of sleep last night, but having made his decision to stay with United, much of the pressure looked to be off him at Tannadice today. I asked him why he'd chosen to stay with the Tayside club.
Well, I think at the end of the day, the decision that it all boiled down to financial rewards or happiness of my family. And I have decided that they are the most important facts anyway, that it's more important that my family is happy, especially at this time with my son sitting his O-levels and my wife having all her friends around her here.
How tempted were you to join Rangers?
I could not explain what I and the directors of this club, my wife and possibly my two sons have went through since last Thursday when we first knew of Rangers' keenness for me to become their manager. And I was obviously very, very tempted. No other job in Europe or the world would tempt me away from Tannadice at this time. And I feel in the Rangers situation at the moment that they can only get better, and it's the right time for a manager to go there. But ambition is what we all have in football, and at the moment my ambition is second to my family.
And your ambition in football terms is to stay here?
Well, ambition, I'm still very ambitious for Dundee United. Don't let's misinterpret the two, but obviously the chances of success are greater at Ibrox than they are here at Tannadice with the resources that a club of Rangers standing have.
Can I ask you one final point, Jim? If you had gone to Rangers, would you have signed players despite creed, colour, religion?
I most certainly have been, I was going to be given the opportunity to sign who I like, when I like. And as far as I'm concerned, that is a step forward in football, because it is football, after all, that we're out to try and entertain with football matches. So let's get the best players we can on the park, no matter what colour or whatever.
Jim McLean. Well, for his reactions to today's developments, here's Ian Archer in Glasgow.
Well, the bad news for Rangers is good for that half of Tayside which supports Dundee United. McLean's decision, like Alex Ferguson's before him, also proves that loyalty isn't dead or even unfashionable. The supporters wanted him to stay put. A delegation saw him on Saturday, and they'll be hoping that he can produce more scenes like these. As well, of course, there against Celtic. Well, it's a blow to Rangers, of course. Who'd have thought that the two top managers in the country would have turned down the job? And whoever does take the Ibrox position will inevitably have the tag of third choice hanging around his neck. There's one man who wouldn't mind that a bit, though, Jock Wallace of Motherwell, the man whose quick departure 5 years ago led to John Greig's sudden, possibly premature promotion. Wallace guided Rangers to 2 trebles. He is, in the very best sense, a blue nose, and I don't think he would reject any Rangers approach. But he will cost Rangers a lot of money. He's under contract at Fir Park, so there'll be a transfer fee. £100,000 is one estimated figure on top of his salary. Bearing in mind the £1 million plus that Rangers have spent on play.
Robson, something of a forlorn figure. Making his way into the area now. And Butcher, and Robson scores! Lee. Francis, the defender. Francis got it in. Cowans, and this is Neil. And Cowans!
Defeat for Scotland there, and if that match dented our pride, then this one got some of it back. Always one of my favourite games of the year. England-Scotland schoolboys at Wembley and an exuberant Brian Moore.
And away come England once more with Ian Scott. Played for Paul Molden. He's got Rimmer up front. Molden doing some good work here for England, but needs that last pass to be a good one, and gets it to Rimmer. And in the end, it's knocked in there by the number 15, Ian Scott, and England go into the lead. Michael Thomas curled in towards the near post, flicked across there, and put away in the end by Rimmer. 2-0. And Maguire getting the better of Bogey. Now, can he also get the better of Peacock? Peacock just sticking out the foot, putting the ball into touch. Scotland's throw, though. Looks as though he's suffering a little bit with cramp. You saw it. The sign of it there. Absolutely rigid there, that muscle. And Bogey gets it back. And a chance for Scotland is taken by their number 11, Joseph Miller. Makes it 2-1. So Molden now, rather Scott now for England. Now Molden. And a goal! Keying up for Scotland. There he is again, the number 12. Getting it through for Miller. Going in turn to get Kelly on his way. And it might come from Murray. And it has! 3-2. So a corner for Scotland, which Douglas Maguire will take, and the Scots have pushed everybody almost except their goalkeeper into that England penalty area. The keeper gets a fist to it, but doesn't get a lot of ground on it. Yes! And a goal! Scored there by Kelly.
.3-3, the final score, and a draw just about right. Of the sporting life. From all of us here, every good wish again for 1984, and we'll be back in action next Sunday.
Well, a most intriguing defensive line-up by Motherwell for this Rangers free kick.
A complete and utter amateur nincompoop got in the way and turned right, turned straight across my path, put me straight into the fence, and I took him, mate. That guy has to be black flag. I'm going to punch him in the mouth when the race is over.
And now Motherwell using their first substitute, and we'll see what effect this has on the team. It's a pity she's shy, isn't it?
Hello again and welcome back. You're just in time for our next sport, which is bowling, and action
tomorrow. There's been only one change to the league table over the new year, with St Mirren moving into 6th place with a better goal difference than Hibs. Tomorrow the two of them meet at Easter Road, with Hibs hoping to reverse those positions once again. Dundee take on Hearts, Celtic travel to bottom place Motherwell, and St Johnstone are home to champions Dundee United. In the other match, Rangers play leaders Aberdeen at Ibrox. This is what happened the last time the two met there.
The money by McGee, Patterson is with them. Olsen! McGee right through to McLean. Here's Weir. McGee, number 2.
Aberdeen are enjoying a tremendous run in the league at the moment, on top of what has been a remarkably successful past year.
Appreciate it's going to be a difficult one, but I think if you want to win the leagues, and you've got to look at going to Ibrox and winning there as a major step towards that target.
Now, Aberdeen seem unbeatable at the moment. How do you feel when people suggest that the treble is there simply for the taking?
We don't get carried away with it. Really, it's that you're talking about trebles. The only one I hear talking about trebles is Jock Wallace. But that's, you're going back, you've got to go back, say, 6 years to when it was last done with Jock Wallace. And really, I think the best way is just to take it game by game. If we win something, then that's what we're after anyway. We'll take it that way. But when you start talking about targets, then you put pressure on yourself.
Now, I know you don't particularly want to talk about renewal of contracts with players, but how important are people like Gordon Strachan and Willie Miller now that you have such a wealth of talent coming through into the first team?
It's as if the weather is going to be much kinder this weekend. Here's Graham Stewart.
Yes, 1984, and there's no doubt about the big brother in the Premier League at the start of this year. Aberdeen, the European team of 83 and 4 points clear at the top of the table. Their unbeaten run now stretches to 18 matches. And the next team to attempt to crack that red line of success is Rangers, who themselves have got a good run going. In fact, their last defeat was by Aberdeen back in November, and they're now in 5th place. Jock Wallace has inspired the type of Rangers play that will make Aberdeen wary on their trip to Ibrox. Will field the Rangers team that would have played in the Old Firm match, so fullback Scott Fraser makes his debut, facing Peter Weir and a full-strength Aberdeen.
Well, good evening to you. The first sports scene of 1984 concentrates almost entirely on the big match in Scotland today, with Rangers testing their newfound confidence against the league leaders, Aberdeen. It was to produce a gripping 90 minutes, as you'll see in a moment. We'll also be recapping today's Scottish Cup third-round draw and taking a look at the goals from last night's FA Cup tie between Liverpool and Newcastle. And Archie, there was one particularly encouraging aspect of today's match at Ibrox.
There certainly was, Dougie. One very special feature of football today was that Ibrox housed the biggest crowd in Britain by far, even though it was Cup Day in England. The crowd of 38,500 in Glasgow was almost 10,000 more than the top crowd in England at the Sheffield Wednesday-Barnsley tie. Now, I know the big guns in England weren't at home today, but coming on top of the heartening league statistics so far, the size of the crowd at Ibrox really is something to crow about, Dougie.
Yes, indeed. So to the match itself, with Jock Wallace's revitalised Rangers meeting the only side to have beaten them under their new boss 9 games ago. Aberdeen riding high at the top of the league and hot favourites to stay there until May. A match and an atmosphere for Archie to savour.
5 bookings on top of the 2 sendings off, but in the very limited time available, it was fairer to leave all of them out rather than just put 1 or 2 in. And frankly, I prefer watching the play rather than the referee writing the equivalent of a novel. Now, it was a tough game, and some purists might well have left with a sense of dissatisfaction, but frankly, I loved it. It was a highly competitive game. It demonstrated 2 stages of football. The accomplished Aberdeen side knocked largely off the stride by the newfound enthusiasm of a Rangers team who combined the basic qualities of endeavour with a fair amount of skill in a way that suggests that although there's a long way to go to reach the smooth consistency of, say, an Aberdeen, they've taken giant strides under Jock Wallace to return to the days when any Rangers' limitations were disguised by pride and commitment. Now, shortly after the game finished, out at Fir Park, where Motherwell drew with Celtic, the draw was made for the Scottish Cup, and here it is now. Hamilton Accies against Alloa, 4th in the First Division against the bottom. Hamilton favourites there, surely. Falkirk against Clyde, very close together in the First Division. That should be a very good game. Inverness Kelly against Arbroath of Stirling Albion. Inverness, of course, the only non-league team in there. Berwick Rangers against Celtic, and they've been down in that territory before, Celtic. Dundee United against Ayr United. You've got to go for the Dundee side there. Clydebank against Brechin, who are doing very well in the First Division at the moment, and they might just be favourites there. Morton third top in the First Division against East Stirling. I think Morton the favourites. Airdrie got the second win under Ali McLeod today, and against Premier Division St Johnstone, I think the team from Perth will have to be very careful about that indeed. Cowdenbeath against against Dundee, who got the first win under Archie Knox today, and that should help them. Motherwell against Queen's Park, I think Motherwell could do with a good cup run. Rangers against Dunfermline or Forfar, the game cancelled today. And Meadowbank, third bottom of the First Division against St Mirren. Aberdeen against Kilmarnock, you can't see past Aberdeen there. Hearts against Partick Thistle, who lost today, but I think that might get one of the biggest crowds of the round. Hibs against East 5, who won 5-0 at Dumfries, and that should give them courage for Easter Road. And Wraith Rovers against the Barton, the second bottom against the second top of the First Division. Well, not a single Premier Division clash, and the opportunity for the lower echelons to show what they can do with the bigger brothers. It does seem to suggest, though, that the draw for the next round won't be far short of electrifying. And further to that, I asked Rangers captain John McLean how he fancied drawing Dunfermline or Forfar at home.
Well, I think the most you can hope for in any cup draw is a home draw, and against one of the smaller, comparatively smaller sides, so you can't complain about that, with no complaints.
But smaller size, that's what they say about the Northern Ireland international team, and yet look what
that's what you say about the Northern Ireland international team. We're not a small side.
Yeah. Well, you're small in terms of population,
that's
but not
right,
achievement.
yes.
Not achievement. Now, in the sense of the support that came along here today, that must make a tremendous difference to the Rangers players.
Yeah, it's marvellous having the near capacity crowd. You just can't hear yourself shouting to one of your players on the park, and obviously the bigger the crowd, the better the atmosphere, and the better the players respond to it.
And are they responding? Yes,
I think so. I think you can tell the difference now with Jock Wallace taking over and the run of results we have had. So, as you've seen today, I think we are responding.
There's a lot of spirit there, John. I think that's perhaps the major difference between the Rangers team now and maybe a couple of months ago.
Yeah, it's very hard to say what the actual differences are from one manager leaving and another one coming in, because we've virtually got the same players, apart from one or two, but we're all fighting for each other now. Maybe we realise our own responsibilities a bit more.
If you had to put your finger on any one thing that is making Rangers different in terms of spirit, would it be the introduction of new players, maybe?
Well, obviously, Jock Wallace has brought one or two new players, the goalkeeper, and Bobby Williamson, and Bobby gives us sort of an extra dimension up front because he's very pacey and he gets behind defenders, so I think the introduction of new players also keeps the other players on their toes. So it's the competition for places as well that keeps everybody well uptight.
Well, one man certainly has come onto his game, hasn't he? Davy Cooper.
Yes, I don't think he's had a bad game now since Jock Wallace took charge. That's all credit to Davy Cooper and the gaffer, of course.
The game itself today, I found it a thoroughly enjoyable game. It was a very tough game in many ways, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. Did you?
Yeah, that was like another cup tie here today. We were very disappointed at not having gotten the 2 points, in fact. We had a couple of chances to score again when we were 1-0 up, and I think that might have just killed the game. But Aberdeen are renowned for just keep going, and they never give you a moment's peace over the 90 minutes. And maybe a bit slack defensive play let them in today.
Weir. Fraser goes with them. Great play by Weir. Can he cut it back? He does.
Can Rangers keep the momentum going?
Of course.
That's what you call a direct answer from Big John. Today's FA Cup
expected at Ibrox Stadium in Glasgow tonight for the special Glamour match arranged between Rangers and Dutch cracks Feyenoord. For details of the match, here's Jim White.
Feyenoord arrived from Holland today, bringing with them one of the true legends of the game, Mr. Johan Cruyff. Cruyff and his teammates will be aiming to take the special KLM Challenge Match trophy back with them to Rotterdam when they leave tomorrow morning. But they're taking on a Rangers side revitalised in recent weeks by the arrival of one Jock Wallace for his second spell of team management at Ibrox. He dearly wants to win this game to prove beyond all doubt that Rangers once again are a force indeed to be reckoned with. Wallace expects a good-spirited match, but no friendly. He told me how much he was looking forward to tonight.
I'm looking forward to the game with a lot of excitement because Cruyff excited me as a player when I was a young manager, you know. And I used to go over there in the days when they played with Ajax to see the Bayern Munich semi-final and things like that. And after we won the Cup in Barcelona, we went to see them in Rotterdam. Inter Milan and Ajax. It was a tremendous game. So I've got a lot of memories of this man, and I would like to see him how well he performs tonight, you know.
You firmly believe, Jock, don't you, that glamour games like this, albeit a friendly game, they bring the crowds back?
I don't think you've got the facts. This is no a friendly game, you know what I mean? It's a challenge game. We're playing for a cup. It might be the first bit of silverware I win, you never know. So that we won't be treated as a friendly. We've got a lot to learn of Cruyff, and Dave McPherson will be directly against Cruyff, so we'll see what he learns of tonight's game.
Of course, a lot of people say that Jock Wallace is purely to do with the success now back at Ibrox. Do you go along with that?
It's about players. My job is to get the players on the park fit, mentally fit, tactically as wise as they can be, and on form. And it's they guys that entertain the fans. I never scored a goal for Rangers in my life.
You regret that?
Yes, bitterly. I beat them once upon a time doing it better, wasn't it?
What about the place, Jock? You're glad to be back here?
I'm home.
Well, today Wallace was on hand to meet the Feyenoord squad as they arrived in Glasgow, and the Rangers manager gave an extra warm welcome to Johan Cruyff in particular. Cruyff, for one, is well aware that Rangers are on the crest of a new wave.
Results are getting better. Looks like things are getting better. And the enjoyment of tonight's game is always that there's always a lot of pressure everywhere whenever you play. And these type of games, it's especially to enjoy yourself and to enjoy the public.
And what about yourself? You're enjoying yourself. Feyenoord are at the top of the league.
We're in the top in the league, yeah. Again.
So the scene is set for an Ibrox cracker in a bit more than an hour's time. Meanwhile, one other football tie has been postponed.
Has been called off, which means only 6 survive the weather. They are Hibs against Motherwell and Rangers against St Johnstone in the Premier League. In Division 1, only arranged friendly taking place at Rugby Park between Kilmarnock and Celtic. For many, the only football they'll see this weekend are the semi-finals and finals of the successful six-a-side tournament at Falkirk, which will be shown on BBC One at 7:05 tonight. In the semi-finals, it was Dundee against local rivals United and Rangers against Motherwell.
Nickel. Cooper. 2-1 for Rangers. There's a great piece of speed there, brilliantly tackled all the same. Albert Kidd almost getting through, still dangerous. Ferguson.
Some new soil heating. This was at Ibrox Stadium this afternoon, which, like Easter Road and Hampden Park, is in perfect condition. In a moment, news of the games which will definitely go on and the ones which hope to beat the Freeze. In tonight's round of it, here's Graham Stewart.
Yes, if you're a football club chairman who's been thinking of installing undersoil heating at your ground, then you should be convinced that it really works after tomorrow, because only the 3 heated Scottish pitches and not much else will be playable. So the games at Ibrox, Easter Road and Hampden beat the Big Freeze, with the possibility that the seaside grounds at Ayr, Arbroath and Stranraer will also be okay. Well, the heat's been on all week at Ibrox to ensure the pitch is looking good, and the heat generated by Jock Wallace elsewhere in the stadium is also having effect. Rangers picked up their first trophy under the new regime at the six-a-sides this week. And when I spoke to Jock Wallace earlier today, he seemed happy with the way things are going at Ibrox.
We're going all right. We're doing not too bad right now. The fact that they've responded so well to the training and the coaching has impressed me most of all with the players. The morale's high and they're looking good and they're playing good. And they're playing as if they're happy now. And I think that was a battle I had to win, the first battle I had to win, and I think we've won that one. So we've got to go and start looking for winning trophies now.
Any players in particular that you'd like to pay tribute to that have responded especially well?
I think John McLean's done very well. He's proved to me by his training performances, etc., that he's a good captain in his playing performances. I think Davy Cooper and Robert Russell, Ali Dawson, Ian Redford have all impressed me really, really well. And Jimmy Nicholl has done a fair job. But there's a lot of youngsters impressed me that we don't see in the first team. Scott Fraser was one that came through and done a job. The boy Derek Ferguson's looking good in training, and young Fleck's going away on loan. He's looking good in training. So there's a bit more depth than people see to what's happening here. The fact that we could put 2 reserve team lads out in the 5-a-sides and win it, or 6-a-sides at Falkirk and win it, emphasise the depth we've got now. And they're happy, they're playing well, and they're pleasing me. At this moment in time, I might add.
That six-a-side trophy, your first trophy here in your second spell at Ibrox, it must have pleased you a lot.
Well, the chairman's lost a trophy in a week, they won one in a week, so it's not a bad average, is it?
Now, looking forward to tomorrow and the match against St Johnstone. First of all, most importantly, the pitch looks in terrific condition considering the weather.
Well, they'll have to be, after the Feyenoord game, you know, there's 17 teddy bears sitting up in that stand there, 17,000 teddy bears. They keep coming on Saturday. Another 10,000, because this game will definitely be on Saturday. Come what may, this game on Saturday, because we want them to play, they're hot, and we need to play, and I need about 35,000 Rangers punters to give us an atmosphere.
Jock Wallace getting himself and the fans warmed up for the visit of St Johnstone tomorrow. He'll use the team that would have played last week, so Scott Fraser will be at right back and Bill Mackay will be on from the start. John Brogan has added to Alec Rennie's problems, but the striker is likely to be on the bench. Derek Addison, Rab Kilgar and Stuart Beattie are all suspended. A win for Rangers tomorrow would take them into 4th place above Hearts, while of course any points would be precious for Saints in their survival struggle. The other Premier...
Arena and Falkirk on the final night of the Tennant Sixes for 1984, this enormously successful tournament which has provided us with a great atmosphere all the way through, and tonight with just the semi-finals and final to come. Team for the Sixes age have got a trophy to take back to.
I hope so, I'm absolutely delighted for the players. I think they worked extremely hard and they fully deserved it. After 4-2 down in the final, to come back and win I was over the moon, delighted for the boys.
It really was a great final, Alec, wasn't it? It had everything.
Everything, that's right, plenty of goals, a lot of skill, because players enjoy 6-a-side, 5-a-side, 6-a-side, purely because you get more touches of the ball rather than 11-a-side. And again, they've got to move quicker, think sharper, and again, it helps them to get the ball on the carpet too.
What do you think about the tournament as a whole, Alec?
Very good. I think it's been a huge success. The players have thoroughly enjoyed it. I know the fans have. I mean, the reception tonight was great for all clubs, so I think it was a great success.
Would you like to see it as a regular fixture in the Scottish football calendar?
I think it would be very good, especially in months of December and January. And a lot of games are off anyway. I think the fans would thoroughly enjoy it, yes.
Great stuff. Congratulations again, Alec. Well done.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Biggie. Thank you.
And the presentation about to be made to the 2 finalists, starting with the losers, Dundee. That quite magnificent trophy, the Tennant Sixes trophy, which will be presented by Hamish Swan, the managing director of Tennant. Dundee, who took on Rangers in what was a quite memorable game. It may be indoor football, but certainly the crowd here, all of us realising that this could become a quite prestigious event. And the quality of the football underlined that. And Mr. Hamish Swan, managing director of Tennant, the presentation of the crystal goblets to the losing team. What a game they turned out. What a performance all week by Dundee. I thought they had the outstanding player in the tournament in Ian Ferguson, who made goal scoring look easy by virtue of these tremendous skills of his. And now to the winners of the Tennant Sixes tournament, Rangers, led by their captain John McLean, who's been on the losing end of a few finals, but eventually getting his hands on the trophy. There it is. And the rest of the team presented with the crystal, and congratulated also by Mr. David Will, who's the vice president of the SFA, most of whose members were shocked, of course, recently by the death of Tommy Younger, and the tournament indeed started with a minute's silence of respect for Tommy Younger himself. I think this is a permanent fixture now on the Scottish football calendar, which can be played no matter what the weather conditions are. And so I hope you've all enjoyed not only the final and the semi-final tonight, but all the games you've seen, and some of these faces you've become very familiar with during the week. And I'm glad that BBC Scotland have been here to bring you one of the most exciting events we've seen in a long time. From Dougie Donnelly and myself and our entire team at Coasters and Falkirk, a very good night.
There may not be too much shouting on the terraces today, Ian, with all those matches off, but if you listen carefully, you might hear Scottish football patting itself on the back. Here's Teus, Hors like us, is a great Scottish expression. It means we are the greatest, and the game's on top of the world. Some astounding statistics this week confirm that Gates are up in the Premier League by no less than 15%, staggering when you consider the number of fans who are out of work. Aberdeen and the newly revived Rangers lead the way, but the pattern extends right across the country. Why? Well, in my view, because the football's good and the personalities are shining through on the pitch. Take Gordon Strachan, impishly inspiring Aberdeen in the way which must make him, along with Glenn Hoddle, the most exciting talent in Britain. Take Davy Cooper, a throwback to the days when wingers were wingers, and now revelling in it since Jock Wallace came back to take over at Ibrox. Take Paul McStay, good enough at 19 for Inter Milan to consider a £2 million bid for him, and Some astounding statistics this week confirm that Gates are up in the Premier League by no less than 15%, staggering when you consider the number of fans who are out of work. Aberdeen and the newly revived Rangers lead the way, but the pattern extends right across the country. Why? Well, in my view, because the football's good and the personalities are shining through on the pitch. Take Gordon Strachan, impishly inspiring Aberdeen in the way which must make him, along with Glenn Hoddle, the most exciting talent in Britain. Take Davy Cooper, a throwback to the days when wingers were wingers, and now revelling in it since Jock Wallace came back to take over at Ibrox. Take Paul McStay, good enough at 19 for Inter Milan to consider a £2 million bid for him, and surely the best in his position here in Scotland since the days of Slim Jim Baxter. While in Edinburgh, Hearts, back in the Premier League, are pulling their fans to Tynecastle to watch their own star, the young striker John Robertson. That's what it's all about, good players and attacking football. And a report out this week, commissioned by the Football Trust, commended the Scottish game for fighting and winning in the battle against hooliganism. Happy days, you'd say. Yet would you believe, on Thursday, the club chairman met to try and change the league system. They'd be better off looking at the figures and doing as the fans want, which is just to leave well alone.
Well, thanks very much, Ian, and it's great to know that things are going well back home.
The South Heating had done its work perfectly, providing an ideal surface for the players of Rangers and St Johnstone, and a guaranteed match for the crowd of just over 18,000. On paper,
against St Mirren at Newton is off, but we've just heard that the clubs will bring forward their Love Street League game due for March 31st and play that game at Love Street tomorrow. In the First Division, Brechin Clyde looks. Aberdeen come out of the deep freeze, 4 points clear of Celtic at the top, and the top two play at Pittodrie tomorrow, so another 2 points for the Dons would make them even hotter favourites for the flags. Dundee United are third, and Rangers, who've been able to play while others have had their feet up, are fourth. Yes, the stakes will be high at Pittodrie as Scotland's number 1 and 2 clash. Aberdeen have won their last 19 games in a row and are looking unstoppable. Last trip there in October. Then Jock Wallace was the Fir Park boss, and the result that day finally convinced John Greig to quit Ibrox.
Mitchell, good turn. That's for McKinnon. Wilson came to meet him. There's Sandy Clark, and that's the penalty kick. Andy Dornan was clearly beaten for pace as the ball came forward. So Ali McCoist will replace Robert Pritz as the Rangers penalty taker. McCoist against Walker. Great effort from Walker, but it's 1-0 to Rangers. Here's Ritchie. Attacker from Dawson. Saved by Rafferty. Here's Andy Ritchie. Rafferty going forward. Penalty kick is given to Motherwell. Rafferty appeared to be sandwiched between two defenders. And Motherwell now have the perfect opportunity to equalise. So Ritchie against Jim Stewart. And in goes the equaliser. Ritchie's hardly had time to work up a sweat, but he's brought Motherwell back onto level terms. Big space on the left for Ian Alexander. Ford headed it forward. There's a chance. And that is the winner, perhaps. Young Jim Burns.
Yes, it was, and it triggered a chain reaction of events that rocked Scottish football for weeks. Eventually, Jock Wallace left Motherwell to rejoin Rangers, and the rest, as they say, is history. Rangers have gone from strength to strength, while Motherwell haven't won another game. The change in fortune was proved at Fir Park in December.
Cooper with a free kick. McAdam on the run. He wasn't picked up. Davy Cooper. Deflection. And Rangers got 2 ahead, 14.5 minutes into the second half. Delicate little chip. Davy Cooper. Blocked by McLean. Here's Redford. Trying the chip shot. Off goes crossbar and thumped in by Mitchell.
Jock Wallace has made big changes from the team that just beat Dunfermline in the Cup last week. Sandy Clark is rested, so Ali McCoist will be on from the start. Ali Dawson returns to the team, so Scott Fraser drops out. Davy Cooper also is back, so out goes Billy Mackay. And Robert Pritz replaces Davy McPherson. Third place Dundee United.
The team between Rangers and Motherwell at Ibrox at the end of October gave Motherwell a shock 2-1 win, and it was Rangers' 5th defeat in 9 games. Yesterday they went into the match unbeaten in their last 8 matches, and that autumn victory remains incredibly Motherwell's own.
Well, the snow is going, but the rain is the new problem for Scottish football, and this afternoon's premier game at Easter Road between Hibs and Dundee was called off at lunchtime because of flooding.
Wallace tonight refused to confirm reports that he's trying to buy back the club's former captain Derek Johnson from Chelsea. Johnson left Ibrox for London last August for a fee of £25,000. Jock Wallace said tonight that he wouldn't say anything until the transfer was signed and sealed.
Still on football, Aberdeen have appointed Willie Garner as new assistant manager to Alec Ferguson. Garner, former player-manager of Alloa, is a former Aberdeen and Celtic player.
Aberdeen play Motherwell at Fir Park and Celtic meet St Johnstone at Parkhead. Motherwell did hold the league leaders at Fir Park to a 1-1 draw in the first weeks of the season. Last 6 games on the warmth of the heated Ibrox pitch, but they have to travel tomorrow to Tynecastle to play 5th placed Hearts. The two teams know each other very well. They've already played 4 times this season. Hearts have won 1 and Rangers have won 3.
Tonight's programme was where it's 7 years since Rangers last won a Premier League match. Today they faced a Hearts side hit by suspension, but still able to field a couple of old Ibrox favourites.
And still hardly crediting what happened this afternoon. Now, I know you left the ground at about 25 to 5 or thereabouts in company with thousands of others after spending about £2.50 just to end up feeling as if you caught the flu. Depressed and frustrated, not because your team had played badly, for I've seen worse Hearts teams winning, but because when you walked up the Gorgie Road home to wife and Wayne's, your side were 2 down to Rangers. And when you're 2 down to Rangers with 5 minutes left, I agree you feel under normal circumstances that you're right up the Swanee. And you could be forgiven for thinking that the 2 explosions of noises you heard when you reached the Haymarket were corporation buses backfiring. I can also imagine your offspring telling you when you got through the door that Hearts had drawn with Rangers after all 2-2. I hope you received such information with tolerant surprise and not as a sick joke needing swift retaliation. You see, you missed the best Hearts fight back never seen by so many who had paid good money to get in the first place. You miss Hearts teaching Rangers a lesson of which Jock Wallace himself would approve, that adversity ought to bring the best out of you. You miss Hearts ramming home the point that they are a changed club and not the easy touch of the past decade. So, now you're thinking of taking out the maroon scarf next Saturday and heading up the road to that cup game at Tannadice. You'll be in company with thousands of like minds, for those last 2 minutes today will have doubled the traffic. And I do have the suspicion that no matter how the day goes next Saturday, you'll be staying on to the final whistle.
That's for sure.
The police have been drafted in from Glasgow, and supporters trying to enter the city without tickets will be turned away. Free coach travel will be offered to the restricted number of Rangers supporters arriving by train from Glasgow. The Highland League side's manager, Ray McIntosh, who used to play with the team, said the game is the talking point of the entire area. I spoke to him by telephone earlier today.
From as far away as Aberdeen, right down the north of Scotland, they're all a big buzz about the game coming up tomorrow.
You had an enormous queue there for tickets yesterday, didn't you?
Oh, enormous queue. It stretched for miles. The tickets were all sold within half an hour of the turnstiles opening. I think the game tomorrow, with the crowd being in the park, is going to create a tremendous atmosphere, and I think it's only going to be good for the game itself.
Ray, I know you must be slightly optimistic, you always are, but what realistically do you think your chances really are?
Well, our chances tomorrow, as I say, 9 times out of 10 you would be expecting Rangers to win the game. But tomorrow, you just never know. The cap is full of surprises. As long as our players go out and perform well tomorrow and play with a bit of pride, I'll be quite delighted.
But Rangers manager Jock Wallace is equally confident. His team left for Inverness this afternoon, and according to Wallace, they'll enjoy the atmosphere which awaits them.
Well, like a gala day, you know, I think it's, without being disrespectful, it's their Wembley, it's their cup final, you know. And if we want to go to cup final, aspirations of winning cups, then we've got to beat the Carlas of this world. And they've got to beat us if they want to get to the finals. It's simple as that.
As far as you're concerned, it'll be your intention to spoil that cup final for them?
I never play for draws. We're just going to play to win, and tomorrow we're no different.
No surprise to find the same attitude in Celtic.
Honour is Highland League Inverness Cali, who face Rangers at tiny Telford Street. But the cup can provide surprises, as Rangers themselves found out in the last round against Dunfermline.
Donnelly to Stewart. Donnelly working hard, supporting his front men. That's for Stewart. Walker is off his line. A great chance for Dunfermline. The ball's in the net and a sensational opening goal for Rob Stewart. It is incredible to think that Dunfermline are languishing so far down the Scottish Second Division. Relegated from the first last season. There it is! Paul McAdam does it for Rangers. Fritz. Back it comes to Redford. And calmly tucked away by McCoist.
A close thing for Rangers, but a cup lesson learned for them as well. Beware of the underdogs, especially when they have a player on their side who Rangers know can score goals. Billy Urquhart, the man who got the extra time goal that put Cali into the 4th round, is well known down Ibrox way for hitting the back of the net.
Jackson again making his run right to the far side of the box. Cooper hoisting it in, looking for Jackson, headed down, and it's going to be a goal, yes. Urquhart scores, touchdown by Stevens, turned away by Urquhart, and a goal. Cooper floats it in. Headed back across by Watson. Smith, goal. Urquhart makes it 2.
Billy Urquhart proving he's a man to watch tomorrow. Talking of watching the game, Rangers stressed to their fans not to travel north without a ticket. All tickets have been sold for the 6,000 capacity ground, and the police will be checking that everyone in the area close to Telford Street has got a ticket. Once again, don't go unless you've got a ticket. Jock Wallace has no injury problems for this David against Goliath match. Like the old firm, the cup holders...
Well, Bob, of that charming girl Linda you showed there, who happens to be the nicest thing we've seen in Football Focus in the past decade, could come to Scotland today, she wouldn't actually win any prizes for predictions because there's an air of predictability about it. But as you know, the margin between fantasy and reality in Cup Day can sometimes be very narrow indeed. After all, when David played Goliath, look at the price he got on the fixed odds coupons. So the players of Inverness Cali and down at Methil, East Fife, and down at Shawfield at Clyde can console themselves with the thought that in this business anything can happen. Well, old Sir Pusia doesn't see life like that any longer, and he says that if Rangers, Celtic and Aberdeen don't get through, I will personally eat a curried haggis, skin and all, on this very programme. However, there's an air of unpredictability in a slight way about the Dundee United Hearts game. Not because I think Dundee United are not a better team than Hearts, they are in general terms. But I think Hearts are going well, they had a good result last week, they'll have a huge support at Tannadice this afternoon, and of course Dundee United haven't had the games they ought to have had.
To play Cali, where their biggest danger will be a former Ibrox player. Bustling Billy Urquhart's in here scoring for the Light Blues against Motherwell, and who, following a spell at Wigan, has returned to Highland League football. The Jock Wallace's men, though, have gone 14 games without defeat, and in the last round they got through, albeit with a bit of a struggle, against Dunfermline.
Acts as host of the Scottish Football Association because later in the programme we'll be making the draw for the quarter-final of the Scottish Cup. We have in the studio with us game, and of course I'm quite sure an all-ticket game at Pittodrie. Dundee or Airdrie against Rangers, and I'm sure Ali McLeod, once he realises this draw, will be telling his men what a tremendous incentive to get Rangers. That should be some game tomorrow at Danes Park. St Mirren against Morton. Well, 2 ex-Rangers players there in charge of the teams, of course, because Alec Miller, manager of St Mirren, and Tommy McLean of Morton, and Motherwell against Celtic, and I'm quite sure that that will be an all-ticket tie. Yes, the quarter-finals seem to be absolutely excellent.
unbeaten run is still intact. Both teams stay where they are in the Premier League, Rangers 4th and Hibs 7th. Well, at half-time at Ibrox yesterday, the announcement that Scotland's rugby team were leading 22-0 at half-time in their match brought a huge cheer from the fans. And the cheers are still ringing out all over the country for Scotland's spectacular clinching of the Triple Crown. The time tomorrow, but only 2 of the 4 matches have been played, as both Celtic and Aberdeen are also involved. St Mirren face First Division leaders Morton in their derby game at Love Street, and Rangers will be looking for a repeat of their recent victory over Dundee when the two sides meet at Downs Park in the other match. Well, and the big tie is at Downs for Dundee for Rangers. The last time the clubs met in the cup was back in 1982, also at the quarter-final stage, and the venue that time was Ibrox. Again to the corner. Taken away by Glennie, but straight back to Cooper. Beautiful shot ball. And a header to that from Tom McLean. Bobby Williamson takes the place of Sandy Clark for Rangers. Dundee have no injury problems, but Robert Shannon will drop out. They'll have to do it all again next Saturday at Ibrox. David Hay, manager of Celtic, today dismissed reports that he's about to leave the club to work in America. Hay quit Motherwell in 1982 to take up a job in a sports complex in Florida, but was prevented then because of visa problems. He said that he has stayed in touch with Stan Stemoshenko, the millionaire head of the Sarasota complex, but more through friendship rather than business reasons. He also said that the sports complex in question had in fact folded. David Hay did say that he would consider going to America if it was possible, but he stressed that he couldn't see that happening and that he intended to continue as the manager of Celtic. Rangers at Ibrox, St Mirren, and Aberdeen and Dundee United, who drew yesterday and will need a replay. Yes, a bad day indeed for Rangers manager Jock Wallace yesterday as he watched his team crash out of the Scottish Cup and have 2 players sent off in the process. There was some good news for him when it was announced that Motherwell and Leicester City have amicably settled their lengthy wrangle over his move from Filbert Street to Fir Park. Staying with football, 1982, a close game with some rather special goals. Now Colin. Inside it goes. And Nicholas does it again. 22 minutes gone. Colin Nicholas gives Celtic a lead right out of the blue. Come back to stay onside. Across the far side, McAdam is there. McKinnon very determined. Wicked goal from Monaghan McLeod. Beck, Fritz and Cooper are all round the ball. Referee Kenny Hope waving the wall further back. Cooper leaves it this time to Beck. Flighted in. Beck does it and Rangers are back in the match. Not that that game represents much in the way of a form guide. Jim Beck, as well as Jim Stewart, and Derek Johnson won't be involved. And Rangers, in fact, are in a bit of a muddle with Robert Pritz and Ian Redford out of the final, sent off in yesterday's cup match against Dundee. We'll worry about that later, roars Jock Wallace, defiant as ever. Celtic haven't changed half as much since the same game, but you could argue that the loss of Charlie Nicholas was worth the same value as half a dozen average players. The connoisseur's delight about this final is that both sides have a genuine winger, important in Old Firm matches where you need width to escape the marking, and both can win matches. Let's focus on those days when Davy Cooper gets his act together. Cooper, an altogether better player since the return of Jock Wallace. He can be an infuriating player, of course. He's a throwback to those old-fashioned days when wingers weren't expected to be consistent. Everybody is nowadays. But at his best, he's simply unstoppable. You can ask any Scottish fullback, and they'll say this is the man they don't like to meet here against Dundee United. It's a pity Cooper's so shy and retiring about his play. But he does his talking with his boots instead, and that's where it counts. He always seems to do it with a touch of class and a wee bit of style. Davy Cooper, there are the match winners then. Oh, I'm not so daft as to give a forecast, but it's fair to say the bookies will have Celtic the favourites because of those suspensions to Pritz and Redford. But you never can tell with the Old Firm. So only one confident prediction. It's just not a match to miss. Well, two big days for you then on this channel.
Become uncatchable in the championship. Now, of course, it's really one of the most important things for Fergie to get that championship, and I do believe that by 4:45 this afternoon, the title could be theirs and everything by name. Of course, Dundee United will, 75,000 people will turn up to see Celtic playing Rangers. Now, last Saturday, Rangers rewrote the definition of the word disaster. They were beaten, knocked out of the Scottish Cup at Ibrox by Dundee. They had 2 players sent off, thus they're suspended and won't play tomorrow. And I think it's going to be very difficult for them. It will make Celtic clearly favourites. Now, they've played already once this season at Parkhead. And there's absolutely no doubt about it that Celtic had the edge then. But that was a different era. Jock Wallace wasn't the manager. They didn't have the inspiration, but they have currently.
And there's David Syme in action right away. Saw him at Tynecastle last week. He made 5 bookings. Hope it's a quieter day for him this afternoon. What is a great goal? Ali McLean, right off the blue, right through the Celtic defence, 27 seconds.
Go by the form book, then Celtic clearly will win the cup, but you never can tell between these two clubs, very much like Liverpool and Everton. Now, some more predictions. I predict that Aberdeen will get, because of the draw we've just had, will get to the final of the Cup Winners' Cup. And I do believe that those people who wrote off Dundee United as soon as they saw their draw against the Italians should be very careful. They are an astonishing club. They've really got to the semi-final of Europe's biggest football tournament with a squad of only 12 players. And all these players were back last night at Canada, being taught the words of Jim McLean, Arrivederci Roma.
Thanks, Archie. Well, of course, Celtic, that'll be the 3rd time, and they'll have it for keeps, Jimmy. But good news this morning, too, and it's from there that the Iheanacho reports now.
In Hampden Park, as deserted as Liverpool will be tomorrow, but don't let that fool you. The Sabbath quiet is about to be broken by the Scottish League Cup final. Rangers against Celtic, the greatest club match in the world, and a repeat of last season's final.
Rangers in a very dangerous position. Cooper leaves it this time to Bet. Plays it in!
There have been big changes since that final. Jock Wallace is back at Rangers for a 2nd time as manager, 14 years after his first League Cup final with the Ibrox club. While over at Celtic, Davy Hayes in his first League Cup final as manager, with the job of keeping the trophy at Parkhead. Wallace has been the big news in Glasgow, reviving a stricken club with his Sergeant Major style of management. He picked Rangers up off the floor and turned good players into a good team, as the Northern Ireland contingent of John McLean and Jimmy Nicholl confirmed.
Through the years, with his experience, he seems to have got the right method of training and the right atmosphere in the dressing rooms, and he's brought all those sort of things with him. And ourselves, we've probably had to set up a bit more with the departure of John Greig and question ourselves. So all these things together have made quite an impact, you know.
Things are very good, short and sharp, and a lot of funds involved as well. He doesn't hang about. And I think he takes a personal touch and all. He knows from the senior players down to the young lads, he has a wee word with everybody, which I think is good for manager as well.
We have worked hard and worked well to establish the self-respect and confidence of the players. We've worked hard to get the respect of the players. Equally, they have worked hard to get our respect. So it's not just a lot of finger on one thing.
Everybody says Rangers Celtic, greatest club game in the world, which it is. I mean, but what does it mean to people playing in it on Sunday?
I've never played in one, but I've managed the team in a few, and if I explain it in the sense that you've never lived and you've never died, you've been beaten by Celtic in a cup final, or beaten in a cup final. It's as simple as that, you know. It's a big occasion, and you don't need to motivate yourself for this. My adrenaline's flowing right now, and there's still a couple of days to go, you know.
When I said nervous and apprehensive about the final, I mean, earlier on in the season, you said if you didn't win something, you would quit. I mean, was that said in the heat of the moment? I mean, did you really mean it? Did you still mean it?
I stick with what I feel.
You're obviously not going to answer that.
No. But I think it'll be answered on Sunday.
Well, Ian, I suppose you're looking for a forecast. You must be joking. Someone once wrote, only a fool would forecast the result of an Old Firm game. I constantly take Rangers to win. Well, I'm not that stupid. In any case, I have to live here. As in all Old Firm games, it's an even money match. This is no exception.
Iheanacho there with splinters in his backside, sitting on the fence again. Well, I think that any team that can beat Motherwell 6-0 must have a chance. For now,
Over Dundee's midweek win over Motherwell makes Archie Knox's side much more secure in their effort to stay in the top league. Top plays second place tomorrow. Look to extend their League Cup euphoria by doing well at Fir Park against Motherwell. In contrast, Bobby Watson's side are resigning themselves to the thought of relegation. Last time the teams played at Fir Park, the celebrations were also light blue coloured.
Cooper with a free kick. McAdam on the run. He wasn't picked up. Davy Cooper. Deflection. And Rangers got 2 ahead. 14.5 minutes into the second half. Delicate little chip. Davy Cooper. Blocked by McLean. Here's Redford. Trying the chip shot. Off the crossbar and thumped in by Mitchell.
Motherwell bring in more youngsters for tomorrow's game. Steve McBride and Alec Kennedy will be involved against Rangers, who, as Jock Wallace predicted, are changed from the cup-winning selection. Bobby Williamson comes in place of John McDonald. Dundee United have strengthened their limited pool by signing Ian Munro from Sunderland, and he'll play against Hearts at Tynecastle. But Jim McLean has big problems with the rest.
There's Walker McCall, chance for Ferguson. 1 each.
Ian Ferguson showing his flair in front of goal, which is almost as effective as that man Willie Irvine. Archie Knox has several doubts for tomorrow. Football week when our under-21 side just failed to make the European Championship semi-finals, and when European clubs have shown an interest in just about every top British player. At the moment, anyway, we still have enough players to mount a full league programme, and this is how the Premier table is looking just now, with the points gap much smaller between the top two, but Aberdeen have those vital games in hand. Dundee United still have a chance, but the Championship money continues to be on the Dons. And there's plenty of excitement left through the rest of the league, with the European and relegation places to be decided. Aberdeen play winning euphoria was dented by Monday's defeat by Celtic, take on Hearts tomorrow at Ibrox. When they played last at Tynecastle in February, Hearts made an astonishing comeback in the last minutes to earn a 2-2 draw. But earlier in the season, it had all gone Rangers' way. Arnold will have a fitness test before deciding if he can face his old team tomorrow. And Rangers will make 3 changes, with Robert Fleck, Ian Redford and Robert Pritz coming in. Dundee and St.
Of action, a dash of controversy and plenty to keep the fans talking.
Had everything except goals. Now Scottish football attention switches to Europe and Dundee United and Aberdeen, who have their European semi-final first legs this Wednesday. Rangers will be trying in that match for their first league win over Celtic this season, while David Hayes' men will be hoping for another burst of Ibrox form.
McClellan's header. Collected by McStay. The chance is on for McGarvey. Brilliantly struck by Frank McGarvey. There's Paul McStay again. Whittaker, Barnes. Celtic very patient now. They have the lead. There's Barnes going all the way. And that's a glorious second goal. There's Davy Cooper. Head flick on, the chance. It's in the net, forced in by Sandy Clark, and Rangers get a late lifeline with 3.5 minutes left to play.
But that wasn't enough time for Rangers to get their fight back going, so it finished a 2-1 win for Celtic. It may have gone Celtic's way in the league this season, but when it comes to cup competitions, things are very different. Rangers won the Glasgow Cup final at Hampden the week before the season officially started, and next came the League Cup final in March.
Now Russell again into the final minute of the first half. Might be some stoppage time, some injuries. Holding play up a couple of times. Here's Davy Cooper. Russell has taken up good position. Stepping inside, Buddy McLeod, and a penalty kick has been given. A penalty kick to Rangers. A hoist against Bonner. Perfectly stopped away by Ali McCoist, and Rangers take the lead. So 50 minutes of the second half gone. Is this the second for Rangers? Yes, Ali McCoist has done it. That'll be a penalty, yes. Aiken penalised for that rash challenge on Ali McCoist. McCoist facing Pat Bonner. with a kick which could win the League Cup for Rangers. He made it in the second attempt.
Jock Wallace has already named his side for this Old Firm game. It's McCloy, Nicol, McClellan, McPherson and Patterson, Redford, Russell and Pritz, Williamson, McCoist and Cooper. Murray McLeod is back for Celtic and he's added to the 13 who beat St Mirren in midweek. This season Edinburgh has got its city derby back again with both...
Division title. With 3 games in hand, they stay 2 points clear of Celtic, both having won convincingly in midweek. Aberdeen beat reigning champions Dundee United 5-1 and Celtic beat St Mirren 4-2. That was the second time in 4 days those two had met, with last Saturday's Scottish Cup semi-final.
To Ibrox and another huge crowd of 40,000 for the meeting of Rangers and Celtic. Their epic 5-goal League Cup final was followed by a decisive win for Celtic at Parkhead in the league. So there was plenty of pride at stake for both these famous clubs, but then there always is.
George Best is back for the second time tonight, this time with his buddy Rodney Marsh. And this is the first of 8 programmes in which the two take a light-hearted look back at football in the 70s. Well, that takes us through to 2:10.